And we are live on the PHU Dynasty Podcast. This is episode 70. Count it, 70. Episode 70, Sean. Crazy that we've made it this far in the off season. And now we're at 70, and we are ready for a couple more team reviews. We got training camp just kicked off a couple of days ago. We're finally getting to that point in the off season where we can actually like overhype people and underhype people and crap on people like Kendre Miller apparently today. Dennis Allen just said, "Screw you, Kendre Miller," for no reason at all. It's unbelievable what you see sometimes with the coach speak. There's actually an awesome Twitter account. If you don't follow it, it's called the Coach Speak Index. It's hilarious. It's
really good.
It's one of my all-time favorites. So I like to pop on there every once in a while to see what they have to think about whatever a coach is saying. So anywho, we have quite a bit to get to today. We are going to do not one but two team reviews of the Los Angeles Lambs and everybody's favorite Muskegon Muskrats. We have a lot to talk about for both teams, frankly, but especially the second team today. So we're not going to cut any of this short. We're not going to try to jam and go too fast, but we want to make sure that we give both teams its proper team review like we have the rest. So we're just going to fit both these in. But first, Sean has a little trivia game to get started here. So
it feels like it's just starting to be like tradition. Just start out with like some weird trivia or some fun game.
Just something weird.
Break the ice.
I'm here for it.
So I'm going to need you to tell me the top 5 quarterbacks in passing yards through their first 16 career starts.
Passing yards. Like all time.
All time. Through their first 16 career starts.
Is Jameis on there?
Jameis is not on there. Jameis.
That guy was slinging it around.
Jameis is number 21, 4,000 yards.
Damn. I'm going to throw a funny one out. How about Jay Cutler?
Think more recent. Maybe like the best player in the league.
So Pat Mahomes, perhaps.
Pat Mahomes.
So
number 1. Through his first 16 starts in the NFL, he threw for 5,100 yards.
That's just that he might be the GOAT. I mean, that's just crazy.
There's 2 not really modern day quarterbacks on the top 5, so I'll give you 2 and 4, Dan Marino and Joe Namath.
Okay.
But number 3 is recent, and number 5 is the 3 and 5 are still active. And they're relatively younger.
How about like a Joe Burrow?
Joe Burrow is not on. Here's number 15.
Damn. Dak Prescott. I'm thinking young-ish. Josh Allen.
Negative. No, Josh Allen wasn't good his rookie year.
I was going to say he sucks his rookie year.
Think like a medical faux pas, and this guy ended up starting.
Oh, Justin Herbert.
Justin Herbert's number 3.
I had to think about that for a second.
And number 5 is the reason that we're doing this list. This guy is currently not a starter in the NFL.
Not a starter in the NFL, but he is in the NFL currently.
He is currently a backup in, I believe, maybe not. He was a backup last year in the NFC. I don't remember what team he's on now.
Backup last year in the NFC.
He did start a game last year.
Drew Lock?
No.
No, it's like there's no way. There's 0 chance it's Drew Lock. NFC. Oh, he started AFC anyway. No, it was NFC.
He was in the NFC last year. He cooked the Eagles on Monday Night Football. Thank you.
Dude, I don't know. I'm struggling here. Can I get a little closer?
You get a little closer. He was in the NFC North last year.
Started a game NFC North. Dude, I'm struggling.
He started his career in the NFC West.
Dude, I don't know. I really don't know. One start last year?
It was minimal. It was like 1 or 2.
I
This
mean,
team had 4 different starting quarterbacks last year. So
I think we have. I think the crowd got it. Is it Nick Mullins?
Nick Mullins.
Nick Mullins with apostrophe.
4,405 yards in his first 16 career starts. Top 5 all time.
That is truly an unbelievable stat.
Scattered
I still don't believe it.
throughout. I don't remember how many years he's been in the NFL now. It's like 4 or 5 or something.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when he got started, and I was like, oh, this could work, and then, but I didn't think it was that good. Jesus.
Because he's been in like a Shanahan type system like his entire career. So anytime he's come in, he just yeets it all over the yard.
That is wild.
He threw for like almost 400 yards in the start last year.
Maybe somebody should give him a shot. Give the kid a shot.
I heard that like a couple weeks ago. It's just been like gnawing in my brain. I was like, I got to tell somebody this. This is hilarious.
That is a crazy stat. Like to have all like Dan be on the same list as Dan Marino and shit. It's kind of wild.
Number 6 and 7 on the list are C.J. Stroud and Andrew Luck. Just to give like some more context.
Okay, that's fair. So, I should have actually. Luck was a good one. I could have said that.
Yeah, Luck would have been my guess, other than Mahomes. Is like
Stroud was a gimme too, pretty much.
Yeah.
Dang. Okay. All right. That was a fun question. I like that one. Keep them coming. And just to quickly mention, I know you mentioned hot takes on the Discord this week or last week, I can't remember, but let's if you do have a hot take, send it in, and then I think we're gonna try to do that along with one of the other preseason poll podcasts that I have planned. I'm planning on sending out a poll to the league just on basic, preseason questions about our league, like who do you think will win, best, breakout candidates, that kind of thing, and just to see what everybody has to say, and then make a podcast on that. But then that would be a good one for the hot takes as well. So maybe I'll put that in the poll. If you have any hot takes, I'll put it in the poll. So
yeah, it seems like a great pod to drop like right before the season starts. Like
yes, I was thinking the same thing. Like maybe could even be a live podcast. You never know. From the redraft, you never know. There's always options. So, anywho, we have a lot to get to here. So let's start with our first team review, and it is the Los Angeles Lambs. Frankly, one of the better teams in the league over the last 5, 6, 7. I mean, pretty much since the league inception, has always been in the mix. So let's start with the quick facts here, Sean. Finished first last year, got that first round bye last year in the playoffs, of course, falling short to the Long Gamers, but an 11-3 season, a very good season, finishing at the top of our league for the regular season. So he finished with 1,974 points, almost at the 2,000 mark. Was the best for the league, but he also had the second easiest schedule in the league, only having 16-10 against. And I noticed a typo right before we started. I have second, so it's not first, it's second win percentage since 2018. I'm using this template over and over again. So James is the second highest winning percentage since 2018. The highest was Scavelli from a couple of weeks ago. And then transactions since 2018, this is as far as we can go back in the sleeper system. He has 369 transactions, fourth most in the league. And then, of course, the 3 championship wins in 2014, 2019, and 2021. So this team, clearly one of the best teams in the league from a prestige value, always is in the mix. And I did send out a poll earlier today to see, are the Los Angeles Lambs a true contender in 2024? And I think as we go through this, we're going to start to try to answer that question ourselves, Sean. So let's get right into the quarterbacks, and then at the end, we'll come back to that. So with the quarterbacks, this is a good room. We have Justin Herbert, Baker Mayfield, and Derek Carr in this room. Obviously, Herbert, kind of the centerpiece of this room, and of course, a little bit of a down year last year, playing injured as well, and then I had an injury, but still clearly the guy in this room, right, Sean?
Oh yeah, definitely. He's kind of getting a bit like pushed down this year just based off of like the situation with the team. I don't really agree with that. I still think he's gonna be. I have him at quarterback 11 this year. I think his ADP is like quarterback like 16. So I'm above consensus on Herbert. I just say he's just too good. Like I don't care like what kind of offense he's in. He's gonna produce. I think specifically this year, like he hasn't been a very efficient quarterback. He's been living on volume. the first few years of his career, and I think he's just in that this style of offense. I think he's going to be very efficient this year, and I think that's going to boon him back up into like a top not top tier, but like fringe top 10 quarterback.
Yeah, I kind of look when I'm looking at the offense for the Chargers. You know, it is a Greg Roman offense, and this is one that we've seen before with Lamar, which maybe wasn't the best fit, but obviously he got plenty of rushing yards. You know, there's going to be opportunities for Justin Herbert in the play action passing game. You know, second and shorts to throw big long shots down the field. Whether they have the personnel to run that is a different question. However, I do think that he will be just fine at quarterback this year. I'm not so worried about a super run heavy offense because I think the opportunities that he does have will be better opportunities than he's probably had in the last couple of years, as far as, you know, more stacked boxes, more openings down the field. And teams aren't just going to be able to, you know, just play right at the line of scrimmage against this kind of running attack. I truly believe Herbert will be a top 10 quarterback again this year. You know, in that 8 to 7 ish area.
Spicy.
So I'm a little higher on him. I just think he's a great quarterback, and I think he can pretty much play in just about any system. But I feel like this one is a good fit. You know, maybe not chucking it around quite as much, but I think he'll be efficient.
It's so hard to buy in that they're going to be such a run dominant team with the personnel that they have in the backfield to me.
Yeah, that's true.
And I like Gus Bus, and I like Vidal. I traded for him, but like it's just there's not a guy back there that can take that much like just load. Like there's not.
It's true. I mean, if they had signed like a Derrick Henry or, you know, one of those kind of guys, that I think that would make a lot more sense. Maybe to just say, okay, this is the guy that's gonna, you know, touch it, you know, 25 times a game. But I don't think they have that on this team.
I kind of like the receiver room. I think I like it more than most people. I don't think it's elite or anything. Like I like Lad. I think we talked about that a lot. And Joshua Palmer was on pace for 1,200 yards when he played with Herbert last year. So
Palmer is actually good. Like
he's a good receiver.
Liked him coming out. I still like him. I mean, I don't think I think he's going to be criminally undervalued in redraft leagues this year. I feel like he's just going to go late and he is truly the number one in my head. So I would take him.
He'll be the guy that's always on the field to me. Like I know they came out and they said him and Shark and Ladd would be the starters in like a 3 wide receiver set, which is hilarious for Quentin Johnson, by the way.
It is extremely hilarious for Quentin Johnson.
That's brutal.
But I mean, realistically, if you're looking at like a Quentin Johnston, you know, usage in this offense with, you know, like he should be used in the Rashee Rice role. You know, that last year, just he's the fourth guy. Get him on mesh routes and crossers, and just don't ask him to do anything in a vertical linear line, which is crazy. But I think that is his best route to getting back to relevancy. But, you know, going back to Herbert, I mean, it's not like he has nobody to throw to. Like Palmer is good, McConkey is good. They did sign Hayden Hurst for what it's worth. He's solid.
And they have Disley and they have
Parham.
They've got a hodgepodge of tight ends, but one of them I think is going to be relevant because I think one of them is going to have a touchdown kind of year.
I think it's going to be Hurst. I really do believe it's Hurst because if you look at some of like his advanced metrics and like I know he's a little older now, but he's the best receiver of that group, like just pure receiver, and I feel like he's going to get the touches. It's
tough for me because I've been thinking about it as like a flyer tight end like sleeper, like one of those guys.
I mean, Hurst to me is the guy.
He's the best receiver. Parham has played with Herbert.
Yeah.
And my heart wants Will Disley because I love Will Disley.
And it's funny. I've been watching random videos on YouTube of like, you know, inside mini camps, whatever. And I saw like Stone Smart. I don't know if you remember Stone Smart, but he was getting touches with the first team offense. So, I mean, like, hey, you never know what could happen. I mean, I know they had, you know, all kinds of injuries this offseason, but, you know, they have players for Herbert. It's not like the cupboard's dry or bare or anything like that. So, I think he'll be just fine. Now, there may be quarterback controversy in this room, though, Sean, because there was discussion that I had with GM James Seafew here saying that Baker Mayfield might be the week 1 starter here over Herbert against the Commanders. I think I heard that, and James, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Mayfield might be in consideration for week 1. So, let's get to Mayfield here. Obviously, he gets the big contract that he rightfully deserved from his performance last year. He's the guy now. He's got the keys to the car, if you will. From a fantasy perspective, I don't think he's going to ever really wow you, but he truly is a solid option. And I think he finished, let's see here, he finished number 10 last year, 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, 10 picks. Here we go. James Sifu has commented. He says, all the Bucks are locked and loaded for week 1. Wow. So he's going for it, and I love it. And Washington's defense is certainly beatable, so it makes sense to me. But, for Mayfield, quarterback 10 last year, do you see a similar finish or something different, Sean?
I like Mayfield, but he doesn't give you any upside in the run game, and he's been inconsistent in the NFL so far, and partly not to his fault. Like, he's had like more coordinators than he has years in the NFL, I think.
It's true. He had 5 in his first.
That's not for him. Even losing the OC from last year, but like I don't dislike him. I just think he benefited from being one of the quarterbacks that played the entire year last year. Also,
he did. He played all 17 games.
So like, if I go, let me see if I can find him on that.
There wasn't many, right?
Per game, he was 19 last year.
Okay, so that makes sense.
So I've got him at 23. I've just got him as like a low end QB2, but like, it wouldn't surprise me if he was like a mid 2 this year, maybe a little bit higher. Obviously, he finished 10 last year, so that's really good. He's been so up and down every year in the NFL. It's tough to like project him to hit the same numbers again for me. So, but like, he will be a really good spot starter because I think he's easy to like figure out the good matchups. Because when he plays against a team that is not great in pass defense, he's gonna cook. So
yeah, and I think like, if you're starting Baker, you're hoping for quarterback 10 to 20. Because I mean, if you look at his numbers from last year, he's either getting 12 points to 24 points on any given week. Of course, he had a couple of blow-up weeks like the Green Bay game. And I think early on the season, he had a pretty solid game against Buffalo, too. But he's kind of just in that mid category of fantasy options. But as your quarterback, too, with a 3-year contract in Dynasty, it looks pretty good to me. Not really nothing bad to say there. Next guy could say a lot about Derek Carr. 33 years old now. It feels like he's been in the league forever. His numbers always don't look that bad, but it never looks pretty on the field, I feel like. He finished quarterback 16 last year somehow.
He's
again,
so good at manipulating his numbers. It's crazy.
It's a lot of checkdowns, a lot of garbage time. He finished quarterback 16 with 25 touchdowns and 8 picks last year, which is pretty much, if you look at his numbers throughout his entire career, it's usually somewhere between 22 touchdowns and 25 touchdowns and single-digit picks. And somehow he just keeps going and going and going. Go ahead.
If there is a poster for throwing it 8 yards on 4th and 10, Derek Carr is your guy. That's his brand. That's what he does.
I mean, he had a lot of 300-yard games last year, but then sprinkled in are, complete dud games, 110 yards, 103 yards, 119 yards, 197 yards, just some really rough performances.
I will be curious to see him in this new system, just because like anytime you hear like a Shanahan style system is coming to a team, everybody kind of like perks up a little bit. So be curious to see that with Kubiak, because I think he fits that pretty well. Like he plays
he's mobile enough.
Yeah. So I think it'll do well. I like his 2 receivers as well, so he has people to throw to. So he'll have weeks where he's startable. I think being the 3rd quarterback is an ideal place for him to be at.
Yeah, I mean, as in fantasy, he's a backup, and in a redraft league, you're probably going to take him, at the end of this backup quarterback wave, if you will, somewhere in that like 15 to 20 range for quarterbacks, and that's fine. That's where he belongs.
Yeah,
he's going to play though, so you got that going for you. But I mean, for this, quarterback room, to have Herbert as kind of the guy per se, and then 2 I guess you can call them higher end backups. They're not in the, the 20 to 25 range. Like these are solid backup quarterbacks. I feel pretty good about this.
I mean, that's where I have the, but that doesn't mean that every quarterback that's like a starting quarterback in the beginning of the year, they're all going to have QB1 weeks. Just about everybody does. So
Sure.
everybody's startable.
And these three guys, I mean, I guess other than Herbert, like most of them have stayed pretty healthy for their whole career, which is nice too, to have something reliable back there. But let's get right into a more featured group here, the running back group. Definitely got a little bit of an overhaul this offseason, with moving away from number one running back Christian McCaffrey, a key cog in getting that 11-3 record from last season. So we're losing some production there for sure, the number one player in the league. But he's got the number 3 running back from last year, Travis Etienne, as his number one back, which is really not a problem at all for me. I think he's going to have another very good year. Hopefully the efficiency goes back up, Sean. Obviously last year wasn't really ideal from an efficiency standpoint, but he got a lot of touches. Do you think that he's in line for another top 10 running back season this year?
As far as my rankings, I do. Like I've got him at 8. I think he's obviously good enough to be in the top 10. He's already done it. But yeah, the question mark is for me is the offensive line in front of him. Like it was pretty bad last year. They were banged up. They'll get Cam Robinson the whole year, so we'll see if that line is just a little more coherent. I think they traded or they signed a new center too. I'm blanking on who it was.
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I can probably find out.
I know it's an upgrade because their center position was pretty awful last year, and that's in a Peterson system. I think center in the run game is pretty.
I think it was Mitch Morse.
Yeah, so I think that's going to help a lot. I think there's going to be a lot more stability there in the run game. So hopefully you see that efficiency just come back up just a bit. It might not be like what it was 2 years ago, but hopefully it'll be somewhere in between, a little closer to that. But
and I think his floor is always going to be pretty damn solid too, because he got 73 targets last year, 476 yards, only one touchdown in the air, but he's always getting his yards, and it seems like his kind of average for every given week is like around 11 points or so. He had some bigger blow up weeks too last year, so I mean it won't be like a sure bet on every single week, but to have this guy as your number one, a 25-year-old back, he's looking solid right now. So I feel pretty decent about this.
A real lack of competition on that team for him too. Like nobody's really pushing him to steal any carries away. So
no, big
like that. Jacksonville to me seems like a team that might pick up somebody that's like a camp casualty.
Yeah, I could see that too. And there's still a lot of free agent running backs that are kind of unsigned at this point that could even find their way onto a team.
You imagine like if Chicago decides to just move on from Khalil Herbert, like
I was thinking that too. That was the first name I thought of actually.
That's because I would say Pirine in Denver, but I feel like if he's going anywhere, it's Cincinnati. So
yeah, I feel like he would go back because they love him there.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting to see what happens over the next couple weeks here because he is the locked and loaded guy right now, but there will be movement over the next 2 to 3 weeks, as there always is. So, speaking of the former Bengal here, Joe Mixon, coming in as the RB2 now on this team. He was more of a flex player for this team last year. He's going to get elevated, but he does get a pretty damn good situation going to the Houston Texans, who really seem to be, yeah, seriously, it really seems to be doing well by all the reports I've seen. The team seems to really love him, and I know the offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick had a press conference recently where he was just raving about how hard he's worked and how good he looks and how excited he is to get him involved in this offense. So I do feel good again about another solid workload for Joe Mixon. It looks like he's got a hamstring injury kind of thing going on already, which is not ideal, but not ideal for a 28-year-old running back. But he did finish RB6 last year. Kind of going back to his efficiency ratings, never really been a super efficient back, but it's never mattered because he's always had opportunities. So I think it'll be a little bit of the same this year. I think the offensive line for the Texans has gotten a lot better over the last few years and should actually probably be better than the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line at this point. So I do feel good about where he's walking into, and I think with the fact that he's playing now with C.J. Stroud, with such a stacked receiver room, there will not be lots of 8-man boxes at this point. 7, 8-man boxes. I just don't see that anymore. It's just going to be too spread out, too many nickel and dime looks, and I think Mixon will be a beneficiary of that. Where do you have him kind of slated in your rankings this year?
I have him right next to ETN. They're 8 and 9 for me.
There you go. So, I mean, his biggest question, I guess, is there anybody on this team that you could see siphoning away carries from or touches really from him? I mean, Dameon Pierce is on this team. It seems like Jawar Jordan might be a third down guy.
They signed Cam Akers too.
Akers as well. I think that's just
if it's anybody, it's Pierce, but I think that's already like a built-in set role, and I don't know if he's going to be pushing him for more carries just because of how inefficient he's been in the system. It's tough. I know he's got a little bit of like good buzz, like OTAs and stuff, but Mixon's so rock solid, and they traded for him and gave him an extension. I don't see why they wouldn't use him as much as possible.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And then, it's a big money extension. And then, of course, like you said, Dameon Pierce was not efficient whatsoever in this scheme. It's more of a stretch running scheme, zone blocking type of deal. And Dameon Pierce has always been a just get it and go forward kind of guy. And, 2.87 yards per carry last year on 145 touches is just not it. So I feel like he'll be a backup, a spell back, and Mixon should be the guy. So, I mean, I'd feel pretty good about having him, in that late RB1, RB2 conversation, like you're saying. So,
and I don't see anybody pushing him for any receiving work out of the backfield. I think that is clearly and cleanly his job.
It like Darway Ogbonwale is like all they got there.
Again, if you're gonna trade and pay him, like use him to like how he's been used so far in the NFL, which is what I'm expecting.
Yeah, he should be a very rock solid option for this Lambs team. And this is kind of where the drop off hits, Sean, for this running back room. Before, even when you talk about last year, with McCaffrey, Etienne, Mixon, and Eckler kind of being the guys as far as touches in their own rooms, those were the clear four, and this was one of the strongest units in the league by far. Things have definitely changed for a few of these players here. So let's start with Austin Eckler. He goes to the Washington Commanders, joining his fellow teammates here on the Lambs with Brian Robinson and Chris Rodriguez. Eckler, he's kind of searching for that redemption year, maybe a bounce back year. He seems like a great fit based on what they lost with Antonio Gibson. But it remains to be seen how this offense is going to look as far as carries go. So I think it's easy to look at this and say, oh, it's going to be a split, like a nice 50-50 split. But do you really think that's what it's going to be, or do you think somebody will pull away here?
I have them 30. I have Robinson 35 and I have Eckler 37. So as far as like total numbers, it's a split, but it wouldn't surprise me if Brian Robinson just kind of pulled away and had the majority of the work on the team.
Right.
He was solid last year behind an offensive line and a team that wasn't very good at all. And he has improved as a receiver too. And
he caught a lot of balls last year.
He's not Eckler in the receiving game, but he's solid. And I believe there was a report about like Eckler being used as like how Edmonds was used in Arizona a couple years ago when what's his name was the coach? Why am I blanking on Cliff? Thank you. And that role, I think Edmonds ended up being like around running back like 37 to like 40. So he ended up with like 600 or 700 total yards and like 4 or 5 touchdowns. That's honestly for Eckler, to me, that sounds right this year. He's getting up there in age. So it wouldn't surprise me. And I just think Brian Robinson ends up getting the goal line carries as well. So I would skew more towards Robinson, but he's got both. So, I mean, whatever happens, like he'll have the running back there.
Yeah, and even Chris Rodriguez to a lesser extent. I mean, if either one of these goes down, ideally, not ideally, but if Robinson were to go down, he's got pretty much a Robinson replacement right there. Because I think Rodriguez is actually a talented back, and he should actually play. Now the question is, does he make James's roster? It seems like it right now based on what I've seen, but
he doesn't have any need to cut currently. He's got 30 players on his roster,
so they're even better. I was gonna say I think he's kind of set with what he's got right now, unless he wants to move people around. But
both of these teams actually, and the next team we're going to talk about, they're both at 30 players, so we don't even have to cut anybody for these guys, which is bullshit. That's kind
I do enjoy cutting people. Yeah.
What the hell these guys are doing?
Wait till my podcast. Then you'll have some stuff to talk about.
So many cuts.
8 of them, as a matter of fact.
The only other thing I was going to say about the Commanders, they're kind of tough to project, like as far as the running back position, because like I don't like it's hard to tell like. They're not good. Like they're not going to be a good offense, but running quarterbacks usually make life easier for running backs. So it's like you're on a bad offensive line, but you've got a good situation because you've got a running quarterback. And I don't think he's going to be a running quarterback that scores a lot of touchdowns on the ground.
Probably not.
It's tough to like. There's things pulling in either direction. So I wouldn't surprise me if like Robinson has double-digit touchdowns, but I don't see anybody doing that on that team.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some growing pains too here, where it might not be a lot of goal line touches or even red zone touches for a little while they try to figure things out here too. So really, Sean, this is kind of where the true depth ends on this bench. We talk about Kenny Gainwell. Didn't really gain well, so far in his career, and I don't see that turning around anytime soon. Is he? I mean, you're the Philly guy. Is he's just a true backup at this point, isn't he?
I think his role is going to be in like maybe the 4-minute offense, but it would really surprise me if they're not using Barkley in that offense too. But I could see him in that role and like a little bit of like passing down work just to spell Barkley, but I don't like he's not gonna get a ton of carries. I'd be shocked if he was over like 50 carries on the season, to be honest.
And he's got some competition with Shipley coming in too, who kind of fills a similar role.
Shipley profiles more as like the handcuff to me, where Gainwell will have like a specific role on the team that's never really going to change, and Shipley would be like the true like handcuff to Barkley.
Yeah, and I think really Shipley was kind of a bet for next year as well, because Gainwell is going to be up at the end of this year. He's not coming back likely, so I feel like he's going to get somewhat of an involvement this year to get his feet wet, and then play more next year. Going to our next guy on the list, we got Trey Sermon, who is also kind of competing for this backup role. He's got pretty much it's just him and Evan Hull at this point. I mean, Tyler Goodson kind of stinks, so he's not going to do it, but. Hull and Sermon. Hull had some hope last year, but then he tore his MCL. So I feel like it's not going to be a quick recovery for him. So Sermon might actually be the number 2 here. So worth rostering for sure.
That's what the sound was from OTA. Like he was like it was his job to lose as the backup.
Yes, and then our last guy is Izzy Abanaconda. Second-year player out of Pittsburgh. He's one of the younger players in the league, so he's still only 21 after a year in the league. However, they brought in a ton of running back reinforcements in the draft. They also signed Xavier Valladay, who I actually think is a solid player, to the roster as well. So there's just a zillion players on this team.
A lot of Z's.
Yeah, a lot of Z's. And then Tariq Cohen actually found his way onto this team as well. So I feel like there's just a lot of people, and I just don't know if Abanaconda is going to be a guy that's on this team.
Yeah. Could see him being like he got traded for like 7th round swaps or something.
Yeah, just like a late, right before final cuts, they find a way to move him or something.
That'd be nice. I'd love to see him get an opportunity somewhere. I think he's good enough to play.
Yeah, I feel like if he got, cut or whatever, Dallas or one of these teams would be ready to come get him. I mean, I think he was a 4th round pick last year in the real draft. So there's something there perhaps, but let's look at this running back room as a whole now. So, we have the clear starters, Etienne and Mixon. I think you're looking at flex guys here with, Eckler and Robinson on a week-to-week basis, and not a whole lot of depth, Sean. And, I think as James has mentioned on multiple accounts, that this year is going to be kind of a let's see how it goes year. So if something goes awry, or maybe one of these guys isn't as productive, or there's an injury, the pivot to a more of a rebuild mindset could happen, towards the middle of the season. But I think we're depending quite a bit on these top two backs from a contention standpoint, and I'm not totally loving it, but I think those are two solid backs to start. Let's get into our next grouping, and this is just these top three guys. What a tried and true Lamb's trio. I mean, Lamb,
I'm
Evans,
giving top four
Cooper.
guys.
Yeah, I mean four now, but I'm saying like historically.
Oh yeah,
gotcha. These top three are what I associate the Lambs with. Is these three receivers, and I think even with Tank Dell emerging, I still think those are the top three guys. I mean, Dell, you might be able to move around with a Cooper perhaps, but I feel very good about CD Lamb going into this year. They once again didn't really add a whole lot of help for him this offseason in their all-in year, according to Jerry Jones. It's basically Lamb, it's Cooks again, and kind of just a whatever number three emerges out of that grouping. And then Jake Ferguson as the kind of the true number two perhaps in that offense. So like, is there any reason to hate on Lamb at all? Because I don't think there is even a little bit.
He's my number one receiver this year, so no.
Does this contract situation have any bearing on anything for you? Because I don't think it does.
No, because
he'll get signed eventually.
Yeah, and you can if you're on a rookie contract, the team can rescind the fines once the player rejoins the team. So like this is all just peacocking basically by both sides, and he'll end up playing. It's not.
I mean, the Cowboys literally can't play without him. Like
it would be
like, imagine if he got. I mean, I hate to say this, James, but imagine if he got hurt. Where like, what is this? The whole season's gone.
I think they're
the roster is not there otherwise.
Are they a bottom 10 offense if he's not there?
I mean, they don't have a running game as of right now.
No, Ferguson would be like the number one option.
Ferguson is the guy, and that's never good. Yeah. You don't want Turd Ferguson as your number one guy.
That's brutal. Like it is crazy how top heavy of a team. Like if any of him, Dak, or Mike Parsons miss any time, this team is so cooked.
I mean, like, I actually think Dak, they probably are best like out of the three. Like I feel halfway decent about not having Dak as opposed to like one of the other two guys.
If you could only keep two of the three guys, who would you keep?
Well, we have to talk about this for next offseason anyway, because they're all three of them are free agents. I think you got to keep.
I think this is a very realistic.
Depth-wise, you got to keep Lamb. There's nobody else.
Okay.
Like you have to keep Lamb, and I think you don't let a stud pass rusher walk out the door either. But then you don't let go of like it's so hard. But I think I'd have to let go to Prescott.
If I tier the positions based off of importance to a team, I think Lamb is the one that you let walk.
I think so,
which is nuts. Because for how productive he is, he's not like your traditional like X receiver that can do like that, because he does so well in the slot, and he moved around a lot last year, and he's great. Like he's definitely
he's so good.
He's a top 5 receiver in the NFL.
And sure, I remember I questioned, I think it was either last season or the offseason before. I think it might have been the one before, if he was a true number one option, and I wanted to see him do a little more and he definitely did it. So I mean, like,
I would say that was a fair question. Like before last year,
I mean, it was 2021. He finished wide receiver 13 with 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns, and then the next year, got all the way to 6. And then this year he was number 1. So he's literally gotten better every single season since he's been in the league. There's no change to his situation pretty much at all this year. I can't see anything other than like a top 5 finish. Like it would be shocking.
He is like, I would be surprised if he wasn't a top 3.
I mean, yeah, that's the thing is with the volume.
It would shock me. Unless
I agree.
Unless he's like got this crazy outlier where he's got a ton of yards, but he like just doesn't get in the end zone, which I don't think is going to happen because Dak throws so many touchdowns. But like I
It's
don't see
crazy.
any way where he's not like a top 3 wide receiver this year.
I mean, and of course we're gonna talk a little bit more about the Cowboys here, but I feel like the Cowboys fans don't love Dak that much based on just being out here and seeing that. And
Based
if
off
it,
of 10% of our fantasy football league.
yeah, well, I mean, there's that, but I think the aura around Dak is always like just not enough, and it felt that same way about Romo too. But I feel like if they were to move on from somebody, I feel like the player that the Dallas like fan base would be the most okay with leaving would probably be Dak. Like, which is kind of crazy to say,
That's such a mistake to
but
me.
it's yeah, I don't agree with it, but it's they love running quarterbacks out of town here, so I think that's the guy. And of course, from an entertainment standpoint, if you're looking at Jerry Jones' standpoint, I think if look at this shiny new quarterback we have, like I could see that happening. I really could see that happening.
Yeah,
Anywho, let's move on here. Let's go to Mike Evans. Literally the ultimate just 1,100 yards a year and
what
7 to 12 touchdowns.
he is the SpongeBob all reliable meme. Like,
He might as well be. I mean, just put him in the
so
put him in the
consistent.
carrying case, Sean. It's crazy. It's so nuts. He is the most consistent fantasy receiver of the decade. Literally 10 straight years of top 10 level production. Has been banged up a game here, a game there. Still always gets his 1,100 yards. Still gets his minimum 7 touchdowns a year-ish. And then last year, coming off his second best fantasy performance of his career with Baker Mayfield in Canales' offense, he was number 4 last year with 1,200 yards and 13 touchdowns. So to have the number 1 wide receiver from last year, then have the number 4 wide receiver from last year, this is the true meat and potatoes of the Lambs roster, and that doesn't seem to change. And I think James would agree with me. These are likely to be both players that will retire as Lambs, I would imagine, at some point. I think there's nothing to question here with Evans. I mean, do you see any difference in Evans' production with maybe like a Liam Cohen coming in? I just can't see him not being a top 10 guy.
No, because he's done it with so many different like coaching staffs and coordinators. Like, that doesn't matter to me at all. Like, he's the focal point of your offense, regardless of who's calling the plays.
He's just the guy.
Maybe he doesn't score 13 touchdowns again, but he's probably going to score 10 because he does.
I wouldn't bet on anything lower than 7. That's for sure. I mean,
oh hell no!
He's an 8 or above kind of guy. Every other game he should be scoring a touchdown.
Agreed.
At least
he's the number 1 receiver to me. I've got him at 8 overall.
Yep.
Like,
I mean, that was
8. So,
and he's finished 8 multiple times in his career, so it just seems right on line. The next guy faces a little more competition this year with, or if you think it's competition with Jerry Jeudy coming in, he just restructured his deal recently, but had a very solid last year. Frankly, just a couple of just monster games at the end of the season to really give you some more hope for next year here. But his last couple of games, his Week 16 game was 42 points, 265 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Just absolutely absurd, especially in the fantasy playoffs, of course, too. Really good timing, but it just didn't seem to. Obviously the Browns wanted to bring in some more talent at the receiver position, so they did bring in Jerry Jeudy, but Elijah Moore isn't much of a thing for me, and Cedric Tillman didn't really pop off last year either. I mean, of course, there's always a chance he improves, but I think Cooper's still the centerpiece of this team from a receiving standpoint. He finished wide receiver 16 last year. He was 8 the year before with Stefanski, so I feel pretty good about another low end, or I'm sorry, high end 2, mid 2, wide receiver 2 performance. So do you see anything different here, Sean?
No, I think I'm right on trend with him as far as like my rankings. I've got him at wide receiver 20, which seems about like where he lands in drafts currently. So, I mean, it's just if you had any more trust in the quarterback, like, he probably would be higher, but you just don't know what you're going to get.
Right.
Like, honestly, if I knew Jameis was the starter there, he'd probably be like closer to like 12.
Yeah, I mean, if Jameis was there, I'd feel way better, which is crazy. I
So, and
mean,
he'll have his weeks. Cooper's always been a guy that like has these just absolute crazy weeks where he scores like 30 plus fantasy points. He usually is good for like a couple of those every year.
he's just a rock solid guy, and
Mm-hmm.
he'll have his up and down weeks, of course. But at the end of the day, he's one of the hardest guys to bench, on a week to week basis, just because there's always that chance for that giant game, and he's pretty solid for the most part. So,
Yeah, just
um,
an absolutely ideal wide receiver 3 on a team
oh,
where he'll
1,000%, yeah.
outperform that, but like he scares you some weeks.
I mean, he has a lot of Brandon Cooks. Hey, we'll get to Brandon Cooks, but like back in the day, Brandon Cooks was like the ultimate, two to number three guy to have on your teams. And James has done a great job over the years of finding these kind of guys. So next up on our list is Tank Dell, um, this diminutive receiver from Houston. Went to Houston College, of course, too. His rookie last year had a great season. In 11 games, finished with 709 yards and 7 touchdowns. Obviously got injured towards the end of the year last year, but was really looking great. Towards the middle half of the year, from week 9 to week 12, he didn't finish with anything lower than 12 points and scored a touchdown every single game, which is pretty wild. So he's going to see a little bit more, target competition with Diggs coming in. And I know we've talked about Diggs and Dell on a previous podcast, but heading into this season, where does Dell slot for you? In your rankings, and do you think that there's a chance for a pretty high finish for Dell this year?
Oh yeah, got him at 24 wide receiver. Um,
And where did you have Diggs again?
so I redid their wide receiver room
Oh,
after
okay.
that last podcast. So I want to say Diggs is now like in the early to mid 30s for me.
Okay.
I think he was like in the low to mid 40s before. But I bumped his efficiency just I don't think I was accounting for like the offensive scheme
Mm-hmm.
like that he was going into. Just like everybody seems to get like that kind of bump when they move into this style of offense, and I think they proved that last year that this is going to be. I mean, you just look at like the yards per out run for like Nico Collins, like he broke like records last year.
Oh yeah, he's
So,
insane.
like
Yeah.
efficiency is kind of the name of the game when it comes to like the style of offense. So I gave him that bump, and that just kind of moved him up the rankings. But back to Dell, he's got such a wide range of like outcomes to me, just because like he could be easily like a wide receiver 1 if one of the other receivers goes down to me. But he also was a little lucky last year as far as like his touchdown catches. Like his expectation for touchdown catches was like 4 or 5. I think he caught like 7 or 8
Caught 7,
before he got
yeah.
hurt. So we'll see. He's CJ Stroud's favorite player in the world. So like it wouldn't surprise me if he ended up being the guy on this team, just because.
Yeah, and of course, one of James's best draft picks, from last year or really ever. I mean, 4.9 to get him right at the end of the draft is pretty awesome. And obviously with his size, that's a bit of a durability concern. Pretty much at any time,
Yeah, he's got a PFF blocking grade of 0.
which is just not. If I weigh more than the receiver, it's usually not a good thing. So I think he's an ideal guy for this team, frankly, to have as your 4, your number 1 flex guy.
Yeah.
If you ever needed a receiver, for one of those 3 spots, he could fill it with really no issue. So I feel good about that. This is where the list gets a little bit interesting for the wide receivers here for the Lambs. We got a couple of rookies up next. I kind of slotted them in with Cooks from just a overall like ranking tier standpoint. Keon Coleman definitely has the opportunity there in Buffalo. Very high draft pick. Seems like a shoe-in for a starting job just based on the fact that they don't have anybody else really more than anything. But he's also gotten tons of hype since he's been drafted. Obviously he was involved in that big Christian McCaffrey trade. I did like Keon Coleman quite a bit coming out. So I just feel like he's really hard to project, Sean, and I don't know what we're going to get out of him in his rookie year, because I do think he is raw and he will take time to kind of acclimate a little bit, but he also has that natural God-given ability where I feel like he could make something work this year.
Yeah, I know we talked a little bit about him when we were talking about Josh Allen on Dan's team. But like to me, like the fit makes sense with Allen just based off of like he's a guy that's gonna win against zone. Zone beaters is what they need because when they play against man, Josh Allen can just win. So like what
Yeah.
they need is a guy that can just find the gaps, get open, a la like a Travis Kelsey style like route runner where he just intrinsically kind of just knows where to be. And that's pretty much what Keon Coleman is to me. Like he's got a very good like sense on the field. So I think it's gonna work out for him, but I've got all of the Buffalo receivers like right around like wide receiver 50. Like they're all very tight bunched together to me, him, Shakir, and Curtis Samuel, just because like who knows? Like I have no idea.
I don't know. And I mean, I personally think they're going to kind of put him in that Gabe Davis role, which probably isn't best for him.
Yeah, I don't love that.
But I mean, if you're talking about that whole Kelsey thing, I do believe that like, Kincaid is the natural fit there for that type of role. That find the space role. But
and if that's
who
the
knows?
role that he's going to get put into, I don't know if he's better at that role than MVS. Because MVS is
I'll take Keon Coleman there. I mean, I will.
If we're just talking about playing that specific role, MVS is a very good blocker and he's fast. He gets down the field, he clears out. That's all you need from that role, really. Maybe not with Josh Allen, because Josh Allen will actually just yeet it down there and throw an interception. But
I mean, I truly think at the end of the day, the roles are going to not be the same as last year. Like, there's no way they could replicate the same. There's nobody on this team that can do Stephon Diggs things.
Well, and even before the end of last season, the offense changed so drastically much. Like, just they went from a high attempt passing team, shots to Diggs, shots to Gabe Davis, to a power run gap scheme team that like didn't really throw that much, and nobody was getting a ton of targets over everybody else. So it'll be interesting to see like what happens, because it could be more of the same to end last year, which means that nobody is really that fantasy relevant at the receiver position, which is kind of what I'm projecting anyway.
So you're trying to tell me Andy Isabella isn't going to be a star on this team?
Is he on the team too?
He is on the team. I got to tell you, Sean, this team has my favorite collection of Jagaloon wide receivers.
Because he's
KJ Hamler is on this team.
That's right? Interesting.
I like that. I got to tell you, there's some guys. You got a Chase Claypool on this team. I mean, there's some
old Canadian shithead.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the old Mapletron, right? I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, Justin Shorter, which I thought was an interesting draft pick at the time.
Even though he was still clinging to the training camp roster.
He is alive. He is alive. Yeah. And I want to say they brought in Quintez Cephas as well.
Brother Cephas.
So I mean, there's so many fun options on this team. None of them are really good, but it's just fun to talk about them. But
it's gonna be a comical cut day.
It should be very comical. Next on the list, we have another fellow rookie, Roman Wilson for the Pittsburgh Steelers, also involved in the McCaffrey trade. Obviously with the Steelers, you have Pickens as the pretty clear number one there. The number two role, now that Deontay Johnson is gone, is kind of up for grabs. I do think Wilson has a good shot of taking, significant snaps in this offense. I think they're also going to have other guys on this team that will be involved, but I just don't see really anybody in this wide receiver room that is as talented as Roman Wilson. I mean, like, it seems like Calvin Austin's going to be the shoe-in slot guy on this team, based on everything I've seen out of the camp as well, which I don't feel great about that. But
to me, that means Wilson's not going to play.
I mean, Wilson, I think he could play outside. I just think it's not his natural fit. So
yeah, but on a run-heavy team, a guy that profiles as a slot, I don't think he's going to get any outside playing time.
I don't know. I do feel like there's going to be he's going to be too talented to keep off the field at some point.
That I agree with.
So like, I think somebody's going to have to go, and I just don't think you're taking Wilson or even betting on him to be anything early in the season. I don't think James is either. I think this is a developmental guy, which is exactly kind of what this team needs anyway, at the receiver room. So, I mean, I feel good about Wilson's like long-term prospects, and of course, the Steelers have always been one of the best teams at drafting receivers. So I'm always willing to take a bet on a Steelers receiver. So I do think he's fine from a dynasty standpoint, but I don't think he's even going to be a thing at least for the first 4 weeks until we can kind of see what we got in preseason and whatnot. At least I think I'm very excited to see him in preseason actually. So
yeah, I agree. Yeah.
This whole offense, like who's going to be this number 3 and 2 on this team? Because we're talking about Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin, Marquez Callaway, Dez Fitzpatrick, Scotty Miller, Van Jefferson. It's just not good.
They came out and said that Van Jefferson is currently the second wide receiver. So,
I mean, that is awful.
But he was a guy that got traded for in Atlanta.
I mean, it's true.
So he brought him up to Pittsburgh.
Second receiver on this team is probably going to end up being Darnell Washington, knowing Arthur Smith. So, I mean, anything's possible there.
Yeah, Arthur Smith, like Wilson's the only guy that really scares me. Like if I draft him, like he'll do nothing just based off of Arthur Smith. Like I'm not really worried about any of the other Steelers. Like I like them all at cost this year.
Yeah,
because they all just kind of fit a role that makes sense for an Arthur Smith offense. So, but Wilson, just because he doesn't profile as like an outside receiver, makes me a little nervous because I don't think they're going to play. They're probably going to be one of the heaviest 12-man teams in the league, I would imagine.
I mean, they will be in the. I mean, obviously it was the same thing with the Falcons last year as well. Lots of 2 tight end sets. I think you're going to see that a lot. So, I'm not betting on Roman Wilson this year. Brandon Cooks is next on our list here. Cooks, being the number 2 in Dallas, not a great year last year, 657 yards, 8 touchdowns, which the 8 touchdowns always surprise me every time I look at it because I don't remember the 8 touchdowns, I'll be honest with you. But he was wide receiver 35 last year, 48 the year before. He's a 30-year-old now. I don't think there's going to be a lot of work for him again this year. I think his 81 targets last year seems like kind of what we should expect again this year as a secondary receiver. Maybe the fact that they just don't even have a third option on this team gives them a couple more. Obviously they lost, a few folks this offseason at the wide receiver 3 position. So I just don't know if there's any more upside than like just a depth guy here, Sean. What do you think?
Yeah, he's in the 50s for me. Like if you're talking about a guy, if he's only getting 80 targets, like 8 touchdowns is an outlier. That's just not something that happens on 80 targets. So even given Dak throwing a lot of touchdown passes, even still, like you could see those going to random tight ends. You could see it going. Ferguson didn't have a huge touchdown year last year.
He did not
easily go to him. So that's a tough one. Obviously, like it's kind of good coverage to have him with Lamb because if anything does happen to Lamb, Cooks probably gets a decent bump. But
they have nobody else, so they have to.
Because they have nothing else.
They have to.
So, I mean, solid depth. Like he's definitely not a guy I would cut if he was on my team, but he's not a guy I would be excited to put like in the flex for sure.
Right, and this next guy on the list, I do have some hope for. I think KJ Osborne going to the Patriots. I think he's got a shot. Like better than he was going to get. In Minnesota. I really think there's a chance that he could be something a little more than maybe what people are expecting. I've been watching a lot of, obviously because I have Baker and Polk. I have watched quite a bit of random YouTube clips of them. There was actually a great video that came out a couple of days ago with them and my favorite receivers coach, the Route God, Sean, on Instagram. I don't know if you know about the Route God or not, but it was the entire Patriots wide receiver room going through a workout with the Route God. And there's just watching them run routes. It's so clear who the best guy is at this point, and it's Pop Douglas. That's not you can't even tell me anything otherwise after you watch this video. The guy that should be cut after watching this video is Tyquan Thornton. He is awful. He can't run around. He looks terrible. Another guy who looks awful is Juju Smith-Schuster. He looks like he's running a quicksand compared to these guys. Yeah,
his knee is on a ticking time bomb.
I'd be shocked. Honestly, like he wouldn't make a team for me. Like he just can't do it. Yeah, he doesn't have it.
What a just an awful like he was like the number one startup guy in Dynasty, like what 4 years
I
ago.
remember it. Yeah, I drafted him in one of my leagues, I think, a long time ago, and he just
Crazy.
burnt me. Yeah.
Football's crazy, man. Turns on a
Yeah,
dime.
he totally stinks. But anywho, just looking at and then of course getting to Osborne in that video, he looked very good. He looked polished. He looked like he improved quite a bit. So I do believe that there's three guys. I think it's Polk, I think Osborne, and I think Pop Douglas are going to be your opening three, and then with Baker kind of finding his way in there as well. And I
Yeah,
don't think there's like a ton of upside, but maybe more than 500 yards like he had last year.
I just can't. I can't get on board, man. Like every time I saw Osborne play last year, he was dropping balls on third downs. Like
Now, yeah, dropping balls. I'm talking about routes alone, route God. There's no
yeah, but
catching going on.
there's an important part about being a receiver. I don't know.
Yes, trust me. I've watched Robert Haran, but I've seen it. I've seen it with my own eyes. He can run routes, but he can't catch.
You can't. Once you see a guy do that multiple times, it's really hard to get out of your head. So I don't believe. I think Baker will be the starter probably by the time they go to May. Would be my guess.
I mean, I just think at least to start the season, you might have some depth here with Osborne, and then as time goes on, maybe not.
I like Baker more than I liked him more than what his draft capital was. I thought he was like an early day 2 pick to me.
Trust me, you're talking my language right now. But so, I mean, I was a big fan as well. I was just pissed he went to the same team as Polk because I love both of them.
But him and Polk were they were pretty close as far as like how I saw.
I did not have Baker much further. I think maybe 2 spots down from Polk. To me, it was Polk, Mitchell, and then Baker. Yeah, I love them all. So I mean, I could have any of them.
You know what they're. You know who drafted them? You know who the de facto GM of the Patriots is now?
Not off the top of my head, to be honest with you. Is it Wolf?
Elliot Wolf.
Yeah, I was going to say Wolf.
Do you know where Elliot Wolf came from?
Washington? I don't know. UCF?
Green Bay.
Oh.
You know who gets really good receivers in the second and third rounds?
Yeah, they've always seemed to pull that off.
Green Bay Packers. So I believe in whatever he did this year.
Yeah, I mean, I thought their draft was good this year. I really liked it. So
yeah, well, it was
better than non-Belichick draft. So
yeah, you're not taking fucking Cole Strange in the second round. Not a knock on Cole Strange because he's actually pretty solid.
Aaron Dobbs and shit. I mean, I've seen enough. Like, God, yeah, it was Josh Boyce and shit like that. Yeah, it was not good. I mean, Tyquan Thornton is the perfect example. Anywho,
Earl Thompson.
Then the next year, Kenbrell Tompkins. Oh, I loved him.
Tompkins. It was Tompkins. I said Thompson.
I love Kenbrell.
I don't remember these guys' names.
They always had like one guy that just like gave you some level of hope and then let you down every year. It was just like, come on. All right, next on the list. So here's our depth guys on this list. We have Demarcus Robinson.
That I'm into.
What's that?
I'm into Demarcus Robinson. I like that.
I mean, let's talk about Demarcus Robinson. Like we're here. Let's do it. He re-signed with the Rams on a 1-year deal worth $5 million. So it's not nothing. They have Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua is the clear 1-2 here.
Sure.
There's really not a lot else. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if he was,
I mean, he beat out Tutu as like the third receiver on this team halfway through the year. So like, I'm in. Like I like it. Like Cooper Kupp, is he gonna play a full season? He's getting up there. Puka Nacua loves to try and catch every hospital ball that gets thrown to him. So like,
yeah, I mean, and he was never the model of health in college. So I mean, I'm a little concerned there.
So like, he'll have a few weeks where he's gonna be startable. Like I like him quite a bit. Like good, perfect depth guy where his upside just based off of like just teammates getting hurt. Like I like it. I like it a lot because he actually like took advantage of the opportunities he got last year.
I mean, he had, from week 13 to week 16, he scored a touchdown every single game, and then really had a couple of really solid games at the end of the year with 82 yards and 92 yards. So, I mean, just having a random depth guy like this is not a bad thing at all. And I think his only real competition truly is going to be a newcomer. Actually, I think Jordan Whittington is kind of a interesting idea there for the Rams because he's going to be that Skowronek kind of guy. As a blocker because he's huge. But, I don't think he's much of a receiving threat. So I think it should be Robinson's wide receiver 3 job. Iosivas is an interesting name.
Yoshivas.
Is it Iosivas?
Yoshivas.
Okay, Yoshivas. Learning something new today. He had a little run, too, of some interesting games towards the end of the year. He had a 2-touchdown game to close the year in Cleveland. A 24-year-old rookie. There was some hype on him heading into the season last year. He's going to be competing for that number 3 job with Trenton Irwin and Jermaine Burton. So
that's the name. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel better about Burton winning this job more than anything, but Iosivas or Ioshavas, I should say,
Yoshavas.
Yoshavas, in preseason could be a guy to maybe separate himself from Burton and then actually get the job to start the year and then eventually lose it. But these are 2 guys I like, both Robinson and Yoshavas here. Charlie Jones, I think he's gonna be 26 this year, James, which is crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, he's 25 right now. He's gonna be 26 this year, and it's his 2nd year in the league. So don't love that. And then Brendan Rice, a nice perspective, flyer hold here during training camp just to see what you got. He was a 7th round draft pick, and he does have some of the size at 6'3", 210 that this team doesn't really have outside of Quentin Johnson, who doesn't even play up to the size anyway. So I feel like that's a nice flyer here as well. So overall, a very solid wide receiver room. Obviously, great top end talent here, and then there's some pieces in the depth.
It's a good mix.
Yeah, a nice depth mix, and that's a result of that McCaffrey trade. That was one of the things that James was trying to do. Build some young depth that could ascend themselves, like a Coleman, Wilson, and a couple others. So I like the team here at receiver. This is where it gets interesting, as always with the Lambs. The tight end room is always an adventure on a week-to-week, year-to-year basis with the Lambs. Let's just group these guys together because in my head they are a group just in that tier. Like they're all just in the same.
They're all in the 20s for me.
Which one do you like the best?
I like Jonnu the best.
Okay.
This year I got him at 21.
Okay.
But I know James would probably say that Otten will be the starter week 1. My only concern with Otten is that he wasn't really relevant last year, and the team as a total only lost 7 targets from the year before. So unless 4 of Mike Evans' touchdowns are going to Otten, I just don't see where he carves more of a role into Evans or Godwin and whoever the third receiver is, because even Trey Palmer had 90 targets last year.
He had a decent amount. No, I don't know about that, but he had. Let me look real quick. But he had a decent amount of targets. He had 68 targets.
Sorry, 68. So
which is still considerable.
That could be Palmer. That could be McMillan. Whoever ends up winning that job, we'll see. I honestly don't know. Do you have an inkling as to who you think would be the third receiver?
I mean, based on everything I've seen out of camp, it does feel like they're going to at least do manufactured touches for McMillan. Whether it be sweeps or he's going to be on the field. I feel like Bowles is always probably going to shade towards a veteran. So I would kind of feel like Palmer would start the year at the third spot, and then maybe you see McMillan take that over as time goes on. But from
McMillan gives me a lot of Joshua Palmer vibes, where he's a pretty solid receiver that is just getting put into a team where there's not much to do until the other guys aren't there anymore.
I mean, so you're talking about rankings. Otten finished number 20 last year and really didn't do anything. He had 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, yeah. I mean, there is room to improve. That's for sure.
I think his talent is better than those numbers. I just don't opportunity is just as important, and I just don't see where it is.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to mention, with Cone, I'm not super familiar with him overall. I know he comes from that McVay tree, which frankly just doesn't use tight ends. So, I don't know how much more there's going to be for him. And frankly, he's not a stud tight end prospect. He never was. He's a solid player. I really think he'd be a better 2 in the NFL. But I think he's not a bad player. And you never know. It takes these tight ends 2 to 3 years to really heat up anyway. So maybe this is kind of a breakout year. Yeah, who knows?
I would rather take my chances on Jonnu Smith just because he's in the Dolphins offense, and he clocked in as the fastest tight end in the league last year as far as just on-field speed. So
I love Jonnu Smith this year. I mean, he's still somehow only 28 years old. He's been in the league. This is his 8th season, so he started young as well at 20. So I mean,
he was on a good trajectory until he went to New England when
yeah,
that offense was just death. Which, like, I don't think that's on him at all. And like, he gets revived in Atlanta. Like, he's never been bad. So like, it's he gets knocked on like eating into Kyle Pitts's like relevance last year, but like
he's
he
always
was
athletic.
good.
Like he was, and he can block. Like he actually can block a little.
He's a solid player. I don't know. It's just funny. Like I feel like because fantasy players weren't in on him last year, like they just hate him because they drafted Kyle Pitts, and that's just like his. That's how everybody feels about him now.
Yeah, I mean, he's just kind of like he's the butt end of a joke when he really shouldn't be.
But
Um,
you know who loves Jonnu Smith? The
I
guy
know
that
at least
predicts
one
him to be the
person.
number one tight end on the
And,
Falcons. That's
and
who.
he had 70 targets last year. His career high was 70 targets. He did have an 8 touchdown season in 2020 with the Titans. So, I mean, it's not like he can't do it. And I like you said, I think with this offense, he's going to have space. There's going to be room to work with. Like, I like Smith the best out of the bunch. I think my second favorite is Woods, but I think he has a long way to go. And I just don't
Yeah,
know if it's going to happen at all. If it's going to happen this year, it has to happen this year basically for him. If it doesn't, they're going to go another direction. And they also have been drafting other players as well at the tight end position.
true.
And then, what do you think about Dulcich?
So he's interesting just because there's so much ambiguity when it comes to like who's going to get the ball in Denver. And Dulcich didn't really play last year, so like you don't even know what he looks like in a Peyton offense, really. So I've got him at 27 just because I have no idea what to do with him. But like if he ends up being like a guy, it wouldn't surprise me. So like
I mean, I feel like
keeping.
in this, with the Peyton offense, I see Troutman as that like Josh Hill guy, and then the flex out guy should be
The
Dulcich.
Joker role is what
Yeah,
it's called.
whatever it's called. But I mean, I feel like Dulcich should be that guy. And everything I've seen from him in camp recently, like he looks fast and good.
He
So
is.
I mean, I think there is something here. Whether he gets the usage or not, that's the whole nother question. But I mean, like he's got the upside, and James has done as rough as this room looks, kind of at face value. All these guys do have some level of upside. And that's really all you can hope for in this type of situation. So I think he's done a good job with the limited capital he's had to find at least 4 guys that are streamable and have upside at some level. So, of course, there's always room to upgrade, but I like these guys.
One more quick thing, because I think this applies to Otten and it probably applies to Dulcich as well, just because on teams where predominantly the ball is going to like the running backs over the tight ends in the passing game, those two positions always seem to like eat into each other more than like a wide receiver and a running back or like any other combination. So like in Tampa, for instance, you've got Rashad White, and he just had so much target share last year where like it's going to come from somewhere. And I think that's just why it caps Otten so much for me. Not even necessarily like the top 2 receivers there. And it's the same thing in Denver because Sean Payton throws to the running back so much in that offense. Like he's got 8 of the top 20 running back share seasons, like in the last no, I've got that wrong. I have to look that stat up, but like
I mean, we're going back to like the Pierre Thomas days where it's like always just 7 catches or some weird running back would find a way to get 4 or 5 Sproles or whoever it was back in the day. They always seem to have that, and I feel like McLaughlin is kind of that guy.
Well, all of them, like Javonte and Pirine. Estimate is the only one that doesn't really
like. We haven't seen it. If he can do it, we haven't seen it at all. So
I don't know. Notre Dame doesn't throw to their running backs, so
it's interesting. I mean,
that was just what I was like. You notice that a lot, like on these teams, and I think that just kind of creates like a ceiling for some of these tight ends.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's get into the special teams here. We have everybody's favorite Younghoe Koo at the kicker position, and then you also have 2 very, very good defenses here. Fantasy. Well, I mean, historically speaking, like most people don't move around, these defenses in our league for the most part. So, to have these 2 people or these 2, teams on your roster year in year out is never really a bad thing. Like they're not bottom half of the league really ever. So I think you're looking good here. And then let's go to the projected starters for the Lambs. as James said, this might be not his projected starts for week one, with Herbert, maybe riding the pine on week one. But this is what I thought, just based on how I was looking at it. And I did not feel good about putting Brandon Cooks in the flex. I think you might be able to flex in somebody else here, perhaps. But, I thought that at least from a pass production standpoint, Cooks is the best player there. So looking at this, Sean, and then let's get to our poll. So I put the poll out there earlier today. We got 7 total votes, and the question was, are the Lambs a true contender in 2024? We had 4 votes for yes and 3 for no. So
Wow.
so there, I mean, obviously we don't have all 10 votes, but there's a majority right now that think that the Lambs are a true contender. So do you agree with that?
It's tough, like, to say yes when you trade away the number 1 fantasy player. So it's tough for me to say.
It's hard. Definitely hard. That's for sure.
It's a lot harder now.
Yeah.
But so I don't know about that. Like I answered no on the poll, and I just imagine if you're trading McCaffrey away, like you're probably looking to move like a Mixon or a Cooper to really just start that youth movement if you're going to trade away McCaffrey. So that's where my mind was when I answered that question. So for me, no. And then you take a look at once you get past Tank Dell, I'll give Brian Robinson. I like Brian Robinson. I think he's a startable player. But after that, it's hard to find players that are startable every week. Hopefully one of those rookies pops or something like that, and that works out. But I don't think you have a lot of confidence past Robinson as a starter, maybe Eckler, depending on what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think just from a depth standpoint, it's a pretty tough sell to say that, there's a couple of guys here that are getting, long in the tooth as well. And, injuries are always a possibility. And I think James is definitely, as we mentioned, his idea here is, let's run this team out there. We have guys, let's compete as much as we can. Let's see what it looks like after, week 6, week 7. Are we in the contention? Are we not out of the contention? Then I think is when you might see a mix and get moved perhaps, or, maybe some of these other guys on the list that, let's start that movement, youth movement a little at that point.
It's a really interesting thing, comparing what he's doing with his team. And then we're reviewing the battle axes last time, where he was push forward, push forward, push forward, move it in for the championship this year. And James is kind of going the other way, maybe not as drastically. He's not in Alex Morales blow it up mode where he trades everybody in a week, but he's moving guys for the right prices and what makes sense going forward. So it's just interesting, just the dichotomy of both managers there.
Yeah, I mean, James showed a little bit. I don't think James is scared to move off of anybody on his team. I think the only one is really Lamb and Evans.
He's not going to move Evans.
Those are the 2 that are staying. But then there's been a lot of other players. I mean, James is not, he'll move people. So it's not this team is the same year in and year out. Obviously, the ETN trade, and there's been movement for sure. So I don't think this is the last we're going to see of the Lambs making moves this year. That's for sure. So all right. So that's so I guess I should ask this because I've asked everybody. Is this a playoff team to you?
I think could still be a playoff team. I think he's going to be fighting for a 5-6 spot.
Okay, so he's firmly in the muck, and that's exactly where Dynabook has him ranked currently as well. I think those top 2 guys, obviously with Lamb and Evans, that's going to keep you in a lot of games. And then of course I like Herbert too. So
that core of ETN, Mixon, Lamb, Evans, Cooper, Dell, is good enough to get him a playoff spot. And then mixing in the quarterbacks based off of schedule and stuff like that. If he wants to start Baker every week, I guess it's fine too.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be very interesting if a Keon Coleman popped off too. That would really bolster that last flex spot on this team as well. So I think it's a borderline playoff team. There's just a lot of teams in that muck, Sean, and I think that'll is a great segue to our next team review. We have 2 team reviews today, folks, and the next one is going to be everybody's favorite, the Muskegon Muskrats. And Sean, this team is very interesting. So I think we should just get right into this because I'm excited to talk about at least one of these position groups. So let's start with the quarterbacks. Or actually, no, let's start with quick facts. I forgot about the quick facts. All right, so the Muskrats finished 7th last year, just missing the playoffs with a 7-7 record. He scored 1,594 points, which was the third least, eighth most in the league. So not a lot of points for. And then, of course, had 1,668 in terms of points against, which was the fourth easiest schedule. So there should have been a little bit more production, perhaps, from a win and loss standpoint, based on the schedule he's playing. Since 2018, Alex has been the worst team in the league from a winning percentage standpoint, which is 29-52. So not ideal. Obviously, he was rebuilding for quite a bit of time during that time frame.
So was I.
And that's the thing is, like, what do we have to show for it is kind of where we're at now. It's certainly.
I have a plan in place.
He has a plan in place. He does have the one championship win in 2017. So, with that being said, we can actually start on the team review. It's been quite a wild last 5 years here for the Muskrats. So, starting at the top, so obviously the big trade from last year with GM Adam Thibodeau of the Chili Cheese Fries getting Patrick Mahomes in a blockbuster deal. I'll pull up the trade details again. So it was Mahomes and Laporta for Kyler Murray, Breece Hall, and Jalen Waddle. So big time trade.
Holy shit!
Yeah, one of the biggest trades we've seen in our league for sure.
Wow, that is terrible.
It's a big one. It's a big one.
I forgot about that. I knew there was a trade. I didn't realize who he gave up in that trade.
Yeah, Breece Hall is a tough one to give up. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
we haven't gotten to Adam's team yet, but you know how I feel about Waddle, so that makes it
right. So, and then Kyler Murray's prime for a bounce back, I think, this year too. So
Kyler's a great value this year.
So anywho, all that to say, we do have Patrick Mahomes on this team, despite what we gave up for him. That's not important right now, Sean.
This is the section of his team that I'm excited to talk about. So
this is very true. So I mean, dude, Pat Mahomes is really good. I don't think there's any doubt.
Best player in the world.
Yep. He did have, for his standards, a rough regular season last year.
Which makes me believe even more that he's going to go absolutely apeshit this year.
I mean, the year prior, he threw for 5,200 yards and 41 touchdowns. This year, he threw for 4,100 and 27 touchdowns. So now that they actually have real weapons on this team, it feels like there's actually like some upgrades that were made this offseason. I have to believe he's going to go back again, like you said, and just kind of get back into that top three and be the guy that Alex is hoping he's going to be.
In our format of 6-point touchdown passing, he's my quarterback one.
Yeah, I think he's awesome.
I think he's going for 5,040 this year.
I mean, he's done it before. So I mean, it's not like he can't do it.
Like he's doing it again, which is annoying because that's going to make this team much more relevant than it should be.
I mean, it was definitely part of the thought process, I'm sure, as he was making these trades. So, Mahomes, he's the locked and loaded one on this team. I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time on Mahomes. We know what he's the best quarterback in the league, and it's really not close for me at least. So, the next couple of guys on the list are where it gets a little more interesting. So, Geno Smith obviously, was a pretty decent piece of this Muskrats team up until we got to Mahomes land here because of Kyler Murray's injury last year. So, I mean, he's a solid backup. I think he's pretty safe here as a backup, and ideally he should never play for this team except for a bye week. So I feel okay about that.
I don't think Geno was any worse last year than he was 2 years ago. I just think his team just really let him down last year as a starting quarterback. Specifically, his offensive line, I think, was just awful last year.
Yeah, and they should.
I think he's a very good quality starter in the NFL, and he's a great backup.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lower on him as in terms of just like NFL talent. Like I wouldn't feel great about him as my starting quarterback, but you could do a lot worse. We'll put it that way.
Who would you put in his tier of starter in the league?
Derek Carr.
I think he's better than Derek Carr.
It'd be pretty close for me, I think. Like I don't like either of them that much. So I mean, it's just like,
Oh man,
I don't know. Like I think if you put, I don't know, Derek Carr sucks though. It's hard. I don't know. It's
him
tough.
or Baker.
I would take Baker.
I would take Geno.
That's interesting. I would definitely take Baker. I don't think it's even close. I just the guy. I like the player. I like the personality.
Ooh, yeah, I know. I'm trying to think who else would be like in his tier of quarterback.
That's fighting words on this podcast with all the Bucks fans out there.
I don't dislike Baker. I like Geno more.
Yeah, I guess we're just not going to agree on that one. But anywho, let's move on to 3 players that have almost zero chance of playing this year.
Why are they on a roster?
Well, I can almost see Lance being like if. No. Hey, listen, hear me out. Hear me out, Sean.
No.
If Prescott moves on in the offseason,
still no.
Is there any chance that he's the quarterback battle with Cooper Rush?
No.
They traded for him. Like I
don't care.
It's like they gotta be thinking about it a little bit. Like it's like I don't know. I think that the Cowboys are screwed if they get rid of Prescott. Like I just don't like it anyway. So it doesn't even matter. But all 3, like Hendon Hooker should not be on a roster. I can't. I know he was on IR last year, so he's an easy stash. But like, there's zero reason for him to be on any roster at all. I think he's like 27 years old already.
If I'm keeping any of the 3 guys, it's probably Rattler, just because I think Derek Carr sucks.
Hendon Hooker's 26. He's going 27 this year. Yeah, and here's the thing: is Spencer Rattler also sucks, Sean. So I don't even think there's. I don't like him at all. I thought he was one of the worst quarterbacks this year. I'm not a fan.
I don't think he was really that far off from McCarthy.
Holy shit! Now it's going to get interesting. All right, before we spend too much time talking about Spencer, save that for your hot takes episode. We don't need to talk about Spencer.
But I don't think McCarthy's very good.
Oh Jesus! Well, I mean, like here's the thing: is like I don't think he was worth the draft capital either. But
no.
But let's move. So all 3 of these guys probably should be cut. But as we mentioned, Alex doesn't have to cut anybody right now. And there's a reason for that. We'll get to it in a couple of slides here. But let's go to the running backs. Probably the best like depth room, I guess, if you want to say that on this team. I think let's start. Hey, you know what? Let's start right at the top, Sean.
Najee Harris.
He is the
Oh boy! Yes.
I saw that down there. I could not click it.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
It was too easy. I had it saved in there for a rainy day.
Oh man, I wasn't ready for that. That's great. Najee Harris is definitely the highest ranked running back I have on this team.
I was just sitting here making this slide, and I was trying to just do the rankings in my head, and I kind of did the same thing. Because like I was looking at it, I was like, okay, we got an Arthur Smith offense. Who's the closest thing to Tyler Algier that we got? And I think it's Najee Harris.
Yeah, that being said, I've got him at RB22. So,
I mean, he finished RB20 last season.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's definitely not off.
Yeah. I think Warren's just going to eat more into him this year, too. So,
I mean, he did get better in terms of efficiency last year. And I will say, Sean, that something that bodes well for both Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren is this offensive line should be significantly better.
Oh, yeah.
Like they did such a good job in this draft this year.
I love everything they're doing. Which
like they slaughtered this draft, dude.
Yeah.
Loved it. So, I mean, Kyle Thomas should be awesome. I think they're going to be a much better running team overall as a result of this offensive line kind of overhaul.
I said it earlier when we were talking about Roman Wilson, but I like everybody on this team above ADP. So, I mean, really, like I like him. I like Warren. I almost said Hawkins.
Warren's going. Where's he going in ADP right now? Like, because I can't see him anything lower than like 30.
In standard, I think it's around 30, which is
30 would be too low.
I think I have Warren at like 20 or 21. Dude, I've got him and Harris back to back. I'm pretty sure
he was really good last year, dude. Like every time he touched the ball, he was electric.
You have Warren, right?
I do.
We'll have to wait until we do your review. I'll let you know.
I'm a fan of the guy, so. But I think from a Steelers perspective, this is a great smash dash setup. I think from Alex's perspective, he's at least going to get, his 225, 250 carries this year. Not really ever I don't think he's ever had an injury that's kept him out of a game, which is a great start. So, for this team, he's rock solid. And I think on most teams, obviously, he'd probably be an RB2, but for this team, he's going to have to slot, towards the top of the list. Next on the list, we do have DeAndre Swift. We've kind of talked quite a bit about Swift over the last couple of months. We don't love it. We don't love it on this podcast. I thought that was a big overpay personally.
He's the fourth best running back on this roster to me. I think that's friendly. So
I mean, here's the thing: is I think I'd put him third, but I don't like it.
I'm really thinking between him and Dowdle, if I'm being honest.
Wait, so Dowdle on this roster?
5. Yeah.
Should not even see him on here.
Yeah. Yeah, he's under Pierce. He's above Foreman. Also, was Alex intentionally trying to get all of the guys with apostrophes, literally D apostrophe, in the league?
Is Foreman still on the Bears? Are we talking about the same guy right now?
Deonta Foreman?
Yeah, I thought we were talking about DeAndre Swift.
We are. I was saying he's got all these guys with like D apostrophe.
Oh, I see. On his roster. I thought you were talking about the roster for the Bears. I was like, oh no,
No. No, it's Swift, Herbert, and Roschon.
I see. Yeah,
and there's another guy.
I think that might be it. Actually, it's not very deep outside of that. But anywho, all that to say is I'm not a huge fan of Swift, the running back. I do like Swift as the quote weapon back, which is what the term that they used here recently. I think let me look if I can find this post from Sleeper here. Yeah, DeAndre Swift called a weapon back. Eberflus said he's a weapon back when they asked why the team moved so quickly to sign him. We really needed a guy that can operate on third down and even on first and second down to be a weapon in the deep part of the field and in the short part of the field and take it the distance. And he's got a lot of gas. So Eberflus is drinking.
That's a whole nothing burger of a comment.
Well, it basically said yeah, we like him. That's basically what it was.
He's not the best first and second down back on this team. Herbert's better than him. He's not the best third down back on this team because Roschon's a much better pass protector than he is, and he should be on the field. He was one of the highest. I think he is one of the highest on field snap shares as far as third down passing downs in the league last year.
Right.
So what does that do for you? I don't. And that's what I mean about Herbert. They might have to justify them paying him by getting rid of Herbert because he's not a better running back than Herbert.
No, I mean I think Herbert is a quality, 1 and 2 down back, and then I think Roschon was the ideal third down back. So I mean it just the whole thing kind of seemed odd to me from the get go. And I mean he's definitely going to touch the ball. He has to when you pay him that much money.
He'll get the most touches on the team. I just don't think he's going to do anything with them.
I mean I'm not hopeful for anything more. So here's the thing: is Swift. Here's his 4 finishes in his career so far: RB20, RB24, RB23, RB23. He is literally just locked into an late RB2, early RB3, pretty much based on all of the usage he's had throughout his entire career. So, I mean, I can't project him any higher than that personally. So, I don't see it.
I've got him at 33, and I don't feel good about that. So because
that's pretty low based on what he's done before too. So
I just don't like him, man. I watched him all year last year. He wasn't the starter going into the year. Gainwell started week 1 and got hurt
right
last year for the Eagles, and he just took advantage, which is great. That's fine, but he didn't win the job to start last year.
And what's crazy too is he's getting lauded as this great third down back. He's
terrible.
Stunk. He stunk last year. He had 214 yards on 39 catches, 4 yards per target. It's terrible.
And that's a Jalen Hurts problem, probably just as much
sure.
as it is a Swift problem. But it's not. he's great. Like when the ball gets in his hand with space, like that's great. Like I think I'm happy with that. But like you have to cater to it so much for me. Like you really have to think
I
about
don't like
how you're
those
using him.
guys. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like where you have to like worry about like remember like LaVisca Chenault where it's like okay we got to find a way to use this guy. It's like no I don't want that guy.
It's
I don't
that.
want
It's like a Kadarius Toney, a Malachi Corley. Like I
the
don't want
second
those
I
guys.
have to think about how to get them the ball, that means you can't do what you should be doing to get the ball in regularly. That's what it tells me. Like it's the same thing that's going to happen with Quentin Johnson. I think honestly, it's like how are we going to get this guy the ball? And it's like I don't want that. Like I want a guy that can get the ball naturally as a part of the offense. Like it shouldn't be a shoehorn thing. So, I mean, I agree. I don't really love it. Anywho, let's talk to somebody I actually like on this team. Ramondre Stevenson, lands a 4-year extension with the Patriots about a month ago now. It was a $36 million deal, 17 of that guaranteed. So, kind of a incentive-laden deal, if you will. But, Stevenson's been pretty damn good when he's played, over the last 3 seasons for the Patriots. He's banged up his first year. He got banged up a little bit last year. But he's a pretty good back, and I think he's good on all 3 downs and can really function, pretty much at any point in the game. Obviously, they brought in Gibson to be kind of that second, change of pace guy. But obviously, with that kind of deal that they gave Stevenson, I think they imagined Gibson in more of like a depth and here and there role. So I like Stevenson. I think he's a good bet to finish as an RB2 this year. What do you think, Sean?
I don't have him as an RB2. I've got him as a low end RB3, but that's just because his offense is like the offense is just not going to be very good. They're going to be much improved, but they're still not going to be. I think they're still a bottom 5 offense in the NFL, which is a weird thing to say that you're going to be an improved team, but you're still going to be a bottom feeder. But
yeah, I don't know. I think that year he had 2 years ago he's RB14, 210 yards, 210 carries, 1,000 yards, 88 targets. Like he was pretty dynamic in a bad offense at the time too. So like I think he's got a shot.
That efficiency has dropped down quite a bit since
it was bad last year.
I don't see him getting that efficiency back, and I don't see him being dominant in the receiving game if they're going to have Gibson playing as well.
Yeah, it just depends how much they use him. Yeah,
and we're a standard scoring league, so touchdowns are super important, and I just don't see them scoring a lot of touchdowns. So that's why it just pushes him down for me. Like as far as like talent level goes, just him personally, probably the most talented running back on this list.
Yeah, could say that.
I think it's just like your destination is and your location is just as important in fantasy football. And I don't see it this year in particular for him.
Interesting. So we're not aligned entirely here, but I think for this team, he's going to be in the starting lineup most weeks.
100%, yeah.
Yeah. So, yep. I mean, he's definitely a piece of it, and I think I guess in terms of your rankings, like him and Moss should be pretty close. If not, Moss should be higher. I'd imagine
back to back, 28 and 29.
So I've never been a Zach Moss fan.
Same.
But man, I'll tell you what, I think I like him this year. I think I'm in. I like him. I think he's a shockingly good 3rd down back. Outside of some like he's not a super used 3rd down back, but he is one of the best pass protectors in the league. I think they value that in Cincinnati, obviously with Burrow getting hit a lot over the last few seasons. I think he's going to be on the field quite a bit, Sean. Where do you have him this year? I mean, I know you said 29, I think.
29. I just like the running back position just doesn't seem like it's going to be super relevant on this offense just as far as like usage goes. I think it's going to be a pretty predominantly pass heavy team. And he's good on 3rd down, but he's not like I don't think he's got anything that's above average as like a receiver. I think he's much better just with the ball like put in his gut kind of guy. But like he runs really well out of the shotgun. That's a big thing because Burrow pretty much only plays out of the shotgun. So that's really good for them. The big thing with Moss is like he's never like he's gotten work and he's gotten hurt. Like he's never been able to like play a full season where he was getting consistent work.
No, he's never had a full season to date. I think he's been 13 games, 13 games, 13 games, 14 games. So he's never finished a whole season.
So, and it's like those nagging injuries too. Is like once he gets hurt, like it's kind of like a downhill kind of effect. And like he also was very good when Anthony Richardson played last year, but as soon as it went to Gardner Minshew, his efficiency like tanked. And that also has to do with Taylor coming back too. Like that's definitely a thing. But even if you're not getting as many snaps, you think your efficiency would go up, like just because you're more fresh. But so that's interesting to know. So like how much is like he's not going to be playing with a mobile quarterback. So like what does that look like for him? So we'll see. I like him like as a nice low end running back 3. I think is a very good. Like you're happy with him in your flex every week. I would be.
Yeah, in this league, it's with 3 flexes. Like he seems like a shoo-in for a good flex start on a consistent basis. He's going to get touches. So as long as he's healthy, of course, like you mentioned. And Sean, I just want to have you know that I have the depth chart pulled up for the Bengals right now. And the Bengals have a quarterback, their number 4 quarterback on the roster. That's name is Rocky Lombardi.
Any relation?
I feel like there almost has to be.
Gotta be, right?
But Rocky Lombardi, Sean, just in case you were looking for a random Jagaloon to talk about in 7 years when we're trying to like rattle off quarterback names, he's in the Rusty Smith category for me. So, anywho, moving on. Chuba Hubbard is next on our list here. This is, obviously one of the meme backs in our league based on the trades that have happened. He wasn't that bad, production-wise last year. He had 902 yards and 5 touchdowns. However, his efficiency was awful. The Panthers were awful. There's significant snap competition coming in with Jonathan Brooks.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I would imagine he'd probably be like the starter early in the year while, Brooks is getting healthy.
Yep.
But I don't see anything more than a handcuff role at some point, during the season. For this team, he was probably hoping for a little more based on the fact that he's traded a 2nd-round pick to Scavelli, which the 2nd-round pick turned into Jaden Daniels. So that'd be fun to talk about one day, maybe. So Jaden Daniels for Chuba Hubbard was the finality of the deal. But it was definitely a weird
league kind of trade.
Yeah, it was a weird one. But that pick was traded 2 years prior, so there's no way to know what that ended up being, I guess, at the time. But anywho, is there any reason to be mildly excited about Chuba Hubbard this year? I can't find a lot.
I have the carries pretty split down the middle. That's just because of with the injury coming back with I'm blanking. Who am I not thinking of?
Brooks.
Thank you, Jonathan Brooks.
Yeah.
Like he tore his ACL in December.
Yeah, it was a late injury for sure.
It was a late injury, and like the clearance for a doctor for that kind of injury is 9 months before you're even allowed to like have contact.
Yeah, like I'm not betting on him
contacts. I
do anything until middle of the year at the earliest.
Yeah, so like I think it's going to be Canales will commit to the run. I think we saw that with Rashad White, even though it wasn't efficient last year. So like he will commit. So like there's going to be a good amount of carries on this team. I think it's going to be a pretty 50-50 split by the end of the year, but I think it's going to be like one of these kind of
yeah. I mean the trajectory will
starts high and it just tails off towards the end of the year, and like I don't see him like. He's not going to have that much of a role once Brooks is in like full force, because Brooks is a very good receiver out of the backfield.
Extremely good.
Chuba's not going to outpace him there at all. So like he'd have to like just be like spell him like 20 to 25% of the snaps, kind of like handcuff running back once he's like good to go. For me,
I mean, it seems like Canales too really likes that workhorse type back anyway. Obviously with White last year, so. It'll be interesting. I mean, at least early in the season, you might have something here with Hubbard, but other than that, not really.
I forgot to bring something up when we were talking about Ramondre earlier.
Sure.
The Patriots have the 2nd hardest strength of schedule in the NFL this year, too. So, which is just rude, because like, how does a team that was so bad the year before have such a hard schedule?
they got a short end of the stick there for sure.
Hey, dude, the NFL, like Goodell is really still hating on the
Yeah, I think this is going to be a long time before that whole situation gets picked up.
Purgatory, baby. But yeah, sorry.
We talked about Herbert a little bit, so we can move past him.
Yeah.
Elijah Mitchell, is he still a handcuff at this point? Or is it somebody else like a Garendo? I don't feel great.
I don't think Garendo's like good at all. So
there you go. Okay, there's a hot take for you. All right, Isaac Garendo is not good.
He's an athletic freak,
he has no talent.
He's an athletic freak. It's just like he doesn't look like he knows how to play football when he's on the field.
Elijah Mitchell has all the talent.
Elijah Mitchell has all the injuries too. So like,
man, he's always hurt.
He's always hurt. But like
he's never played more than 12 games.
He's a guy. Who knows? Like I have no idea who is Christian McCaffrey in this league. Who knows? But like I think he's a valuable handcuff if somebody was trying to acquire him. And I think if you are a guy that has McCaffrey in your league, you should definitely look into it.
Listen, we'll think about it. We'll take your suggestion and we'll put it in the suggestion box.
If you'd like to look at the stats for a running back after a season where they have 400 touches, you can look at that trade opportunity again.
Listen, I'm all in. I'm all in on Christian McCaffrey, obviously. So
this isn't your team's week, so I don't want to like dive too much into this. We'll talk more about it when we get to your team. But like,
yeah, I mean, Mitchell, he's the clear handcuff, though. I mean, it seems like at this point, and I think they even called him the number 2 back recently at some point. Mm-hmm. So I mean, there's something there. Pierce, we talked about a little bit too here. I just don't know if he's a good fit in this scheme, and I just don't think he's going to get much usage really anyway this year. I mean, he would basically need a mix and injury to have, some level of relevance for fantasy, I think, this season. It sucks because he looks so good as a rookie too, and it just isn't. It is not translated at all last year. So, any other thoughts on Pierce or good to move here?
No, we talked about it earlier. I think it's just a bad position for him, like as far as like the style of offense and Mixon being a kind of guy that just is there, like he'll eat up a lot of the opportunity.
Yeah, and then Deontay Foreman here, he's going to be likely the number 3 back in Cleveland. I've seen him; he's getting reps as like a kick returner, and then Jerome Ford and Chubb should be the 1-2, but he's decent insurance in case Chubb isn't ready early in the season too. So
yeah, I don't think Chubb's playing probably the first few weeks of the year. So Foreman probably relevant the first month of the season, just because like Ford, outside of like a couple of big plays, wasn't that great last year. He wasn't bad.
Not really. He was kind of just a guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So and Foreman's just kind of been like a mercenary going around, like being pretty solid wherever he goes, considering he has a torn Achilles on his history. So
yeah, I mean, he's managed to make a decent career for himself. He's been involved in multiple different stops. So I think it's interesting. All right, next guy, probably the last guy's worth talking about, Eric Gray. I mean, he's in the mix.
Do you want to talk about Dowdle or no?
Oh, should I pass by him? Yeah, I guess we could talk about Dowdle.
I think he's pretty relevant like this year.
He definitely is relevant this year as opposed to other years. So, yeah, go ahead and start up on Dowdle. I'm going to pull up his numbers here.
Currently, like, there's not a lot to go off of because he's like 26 already.
I mean, he had 89 carries last year. So
and there's not a lot to go on, just other than the fact that like the opportunity is probably going to be there. I imagine it's going to be like a relatively even split between him and Zeke, which isn't inspiring, but like it's opportunity on the Dallas team that like they move the ball. It's like the opposite. Like
somebody's going to bang in a couple touchdowns, right? Like somebody's got to do it.
I mean, I've got him at 36. I got running back 36.
That's pretty high. I mean, that is reasonably high.
It's just a matter of where you are, man. Like I think Stevenson is obviously a much better running back than Rico Dowdle, but like it kind of doesn't matter sometimes. I don't know.
I mean, Dowdle has been on the Cowboys this is his 5th season, which is crazy to
correct. Me. Yeah, and
I still don't even believe that.
I would say 36 is like a big, like probably ceiling. He probably needs to be moved back, to be honest. Especially if they bring anybody else in, which as soon as they make any move, like I am 100% like rearranging that.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I don't know how Dallas goes into this preseason, the cut time frame, and is just okay with what they have. Like there's going to be there has to be somebody that gets moved on from that would upgrade this team. There's just no way that you could tell me that, one of these guys that gets cut is not going to be better than some of the options they have here. So I am looking forward to. I feel like the cuts this year should actually be kind of fun in the NFL because I think there's going to be some situations changing.
If
one of them,
if you give me like, we keep going back to Khalil Herbert, but you throw like Khalil Herbert like in there, like
great fit.
RB, Zeke probably steals goal line, but I don't know, like RB 30.
I mean, it's probably a similar split to
in there.
What Stevenson and Zeke was last year. Honestly, it feels similar.
Yeah.
So like I could see Herbert taking the Stevenson role and Zeke is a good third down back. Like he is awesome.
Yeah, his like PFF grades and stuff last year for the Patriots were terrible, but like I care zero about stats on the Patriots because that team was awful.
I mean, he's always been the best pass blocking running back in the league. So I mean, he's gonna find his way on the field on third downs.
He's playing with Dak again. He knows exactly where he needs to be when he's playing with Dak. So
yeah, you would imagine it's so weird that he's even back to begin with. Anywho, moving along, we got Eric Gray. He's gonna be in the mix, for carries, but I think this is clearly, Singletary's job. I think he's just more of a depth play.
Yeah, I like Tracy more than I like.
I do like Tracy quite a bit as well, and I think Tracy is more of a passing down, threat than Gray would.
He's a good complement to Singletary. I think that works out. He's got a lot of athleticism. So for a team that needs just a little bit of like oomph to him, I think Tracy he just probably has a better chance of getting on the field.
Yeah, and then Vaki and Johnson, I'm not going to really talk about those guys. They're just waiver wire fodder.
Safety too. He's probably going to be a safety.
I really don't even. I keep seeing he gets picked up and cut. And I'm like, why are people talking about this guy? Like, I just don't see it. Anywho, this is where the fun begins. The wide receiver list. This is, folks. This was not a typo. I've been known to have some typos on here. This is not a typo. This is the wide receiver list. He has 5 total wide receivers for this year, and I don't know, Sean, how this can win a championship. This just can't. It's just not. Like, if I understand, having he has a decent amount of depth at the receiver or the running back position. This is just not it, though. I mean, obviously with Puka, T. Higgins, and Calvin Ridley, you have a very solid trio of starting receivers. Like all 3 of those, I think they're solid. I think Puka's a wide receiver 1. Would you say that? No. Okay, where does he rank for you this year then?
12.
Okay, so 12. I mean, I think Higgins is in the conversation from wide receiver 10 to 20. I think that's fair for him. But you just told me 5 minutes ago that they're going to throw a lot. So who's it going to?
That's true, but Higgins doesn't play every game.
Not every game. I will agree with you there. I mean, I don't.
You give me. Look at Higgins' history and tell me what his best season was.
His best season was 17.
Okay, what were his stats that year?
Let's see. He had 1,100 yards, 6 touchdowns, and then 1042 and 7. But he's a 110 target guy each year. So
I've got him for 1030 and 6. That could be more, if I'm being honest. I think that could be more. But
so I mean, historically, that would put him, and he was also hurt for 3 of the games in that 17 year, he
is literally in that category of like I want to project him for more than 13 games, and there's only a couple players that I really do that with.
I mean, he is banged up quite a bit. I'm not gonna try to argue that at all. And then last year, obviously, he was banged up quite a bit as well.
Yeah, I've got him at wide receiver 30. Like if we're talking just like on-field talent, I would agree with you.
Man, I cannot put him at 30. I understand you're projecting injuries there. I just can't do it. I mean, I have to. I mean, he did play a full season, not the last season, but the year before. So I mean, it's not like he can't do it.
Also, we haven't gotten to another receiver on that Bengals team yet in our.
I guess, yeah. I guess if you're projecting that player to do well, then I understand. I guess, but anywho, let's go to Ridley then. So Ridley. I mean, I don't love it this year.
He
didn't love it last year.
He's not a wide receiver 1 on a team. which could be a good thing this
Yeah,
year.
I think it's a good fit for the Titans.
It works out that Hopkins is on this team with him. I like Hopkins a little more this year, which is hard for me to say without sounding biased because he's on my team. But like, he was put in a role last year where like he was just put on the outside and told to win as an X receiver, and like that's just not him. He struggled. He didn't know where he was on the boundaries because it wasn't a comfortable position for him last year. So we'll see. Like it's the Titans are tough because like, what are you going to get out of Will Levis? He's got good players around him. So like, is he good enough to win when he's got good players around him, or is he dragging those guys down? I kind of went 50-50. So like, Ridley is at best a flex start for me this year.
Interesting. So Brian Callahan told ESPN he envisions Ridley's role to be very similar to Jamar Chase for the Bengals.
That's not good.
I don't know about that. He's not. Chase is bigger and faster and stronger, so I don't know how that works out. But yeah, that's gonna be interesting. And Joe Burrow is way different than Will Levis. So, anywho, so I mean, it's clear that we have a starting three here, unless you see Jacoby Myers somehow supplanting Ridley.
No, I'm worried about Myers this year. He once McDaniels was gone, he lost 3 targets per game last year after the firing.
I mean, yeah,
it was significant. Like he tanked. He fell off a cliff last year after that. So that's tough. We'll see. Like he's good. I think he's talented. You could put him as a flex, and I think it would be manageable. But I'm under consensus on like everybody in his room, and it sounds like I'm really shitting on his team. It's just the way it worked out for me. Like I didn't even defend myself about the Puka spot because I put him at wide receiver 12. But like,
yeah, I was gonna go back to Puka there.
Yeah,
I was say he finished wide receiver 5 last year, but it, had a historic rookie season. So
yeah, I fall into the line of where that probably is his best like season as a pro. More than likely, because you only get like 1 or 2 more years with Stafford probably. But and I don't know, I think this team is going to be very, very run dominant in the red zone. So I don't know how many receiving. Like I don't think last year was a fluke when it came to the touchdown passes.
He had 6 last year.
He had 6, and I think I have him projected for 6 again, which is not anywhere close to elite as far as receivers go. Like
it's just 1 every 3 games or so.
I think I have Kupp for like 7 or 8. So it's not like I have Kupp drastically ahead of him on touchdowns. I think Kupp is probably going to be the first read in the red zone when they throw it, which is another kind of negative for Nakua just because Kupp has been with Stafford longer. Like I think he's just more of a first read kind of guy for him there. So I don't know. I just for that like yards. Because we're a standard scoring league, I think Nakua gets a decent bump in like a PPR style league. But for us, I just think that kind of costs them a little. And I just don't know if the volume is going to be the same as last year. I think it probably takes a bit of a dip.
I mean, I had 160 targets last year, Sean.
As a rookie,
that's pretty wild. It's pretty wild.
I don't know. I think I've got him at 100 and like 40, 130 something, 140, somewhere in there. So even just like that little bit of volume dip is cost him because it's not like he wasn't like what did he finish last year?
He was number 5.
He was 5. So like I don't know. That is a big dip. But
I mean, 1,500 yards and 6 touchdowns basically is what he had. 105 catches on 160 targets.
Yeah,
he's not super efficient either.
He did have one of the highest drop rates in the NFL last year too, and I don't know. He makes me nervous. Like I was saying earlier, like he catches a lot of hospital balls. So.
Well, I mean, he goes hard. I'll say that.
Yeah,
like there's some
100%.
crazy ass catches that I've seen, like where he just lays everything on the line. And I love the hustle, but at some point, that could get a little dangerous. But I mean, I think at worst it's like 15 or something. Like
yeah, I am like 100%. I feel like I'm contradicting myself when it comes to like I bump him down because Kupp didn't play a lot last year, but at the same time, I'm negging Higgins because he's not going to play a lot. So like I'm talking out of 2 sides of my mouth probably between those two. But part of it for Higgins is I just think Chase is going to be really good this year. But yeah, I when him and Cup played, I just went off of those projections as far as targets go, and that's where I landed.
That's fair, and I think it's just really really hard to project that level of involvement,
Yeah.
and it's just this is so like it's never happened before, so it's crazy. So and then Traylon Burks is the last guy on this list. A long journey here to get to where we're at, but he has not been it. He seems to be another in the long line of first round busts. He's going to be a contributor on special teams, Sean, which is usually the death wish there. That's the Grim Reaper comment there. So
AJ Brown turned into Traylon Burks. Failure turned into signing DeAndre Hopkins, which turned into signing Calvin Ridley.
it's the gift that keeps giving, Sean.
It's brutal.
It is rough, dude.
That is brutal.
The Titans have definitely, I mean, obviously, like John Robinson did not do a very good job at all. I'll just never forget that trade, and then Mike Vrabel's reaction in the war room, where he's just like, "You got to be kidding me!" Like, what do we do? We trade our best player for a pick to? It's like, but you could have had a boat. We already have one. The whole thing was crazy.
I don't see how you don't trade one of those running backs for a receiver. If I'm Alex, but
anyway. I think that's that. But let's talk about that, because we're looking at 5 wide receivers, Sean. We could start 6 in a flex league. Obviously, that's not going to happen on this team. But like, you can't possibly win. Like, we're talking about, if we have 2 injuries, we're talking about starting Traylon Burks. We have no other option. Free agents.
The Titans aren't even talking about starting Traylon Burks.
Exactly. Like, it's
not great.
If we get a Puka injury and a Higgins injury, we are toast. We are absolute toast. There is nothing here. And this free agency, obviously, in this league, there's not a lot of options at all at the receiver position that are available at any given time. Another problem, Sean, is we don't have any draft capital to even make a move for a receiver. So like you said, our only real option is to move one of this long list of running backs. And none of these guys are top end of the value. Like, what are you going to get?
Maybe like who's a good like a wide receiver in like the 25 to 35 range style kind of guy, right? So I don't know.
I mean, like, you might get like like a Hollywood Brown, maybe, something like that.
Even. I mean, I would do that, but I'm a wild man. I mean,
like a Josh Palmer, perhaps. Like, you're not getting.
Wow, that's high praise for Josh Palmer.
I mean, I'm just like.
He's like wide receiver 60 right now in draft.
I'm just looking at the mass trade list. I'm just like trying to find a couple guys that might fit that.
I know it's going to change so much. I've been playing so much. I played so much best ball this offseason, so I've been looking at all of those rankings. It's going to change so much once like the regular home leagues start playing.
Yeah, I think the ADPs are totally going to set themselves up.
There's no quarterbacks in the top like 24 picks or something right now in like ADP, which is as soon as the casuals start playing, it's going to be like Patrick Mahomes 101, and it's going to work out.
Yeah, and it probably will work. Yeah, but it's this team is a bit stuck, Sean. Like, I just don't know how. I don't know how this team gets better soon. I don't think it can.
This team needs Mahomes to throw for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns.
And I think the only other just level of hope is going to be right here at the top of this tight end list. Is just like, you got to hope that Laporta can replicate what he did last year and continue to be just like a top 3 tight end. And even then, is that enough to get into the playoffs in this league, Sean? I just don't know how you can. I don't know how this wide receiver depth gets in the playoffs, Sean. I just don't know how it does. This league is all about depth, and we don't have it at all.
Yeah. I've got Laporta as tight end 2 this year. It's like, I like Laporta, I think, but like, he scored a lot of touchdowns last year. I don't know.
He scored 10 touchdowns. I mean, he had 889 yards. He had 120 targets as a rookie tight end.
And it's not like they lost some targets last year with like Reynolds leaving, but like outside of that, they didn't really lose that much. And you would assume that JMO is going to get those.
I
You
mean,
would think.
trust me.
I know you're hoping that's what happens.
I would love that. And do I think it's going to happen? Like, I want to. I'm a agnostic. I want to see it before I believe it. But
so
I mean,
you're really banking on like Ken Laporta open up a little more as far as like efficiency goes, and like that's tough. Like, there's only so much like you can get from the tight end position. So like, I like
how much higher?
900 to 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns seems like probably capped.
I mean, I would be surprised if there was anything more than 1,000 yards for sure.
That's assuming no injuries. Like, if
he was healthy,
Amon-Ra misses any games, like obviously that can change, but it doesn't help that they really like the Venn diagram of where him and St. Brown play, like as far as like where they play on the field they cover each other a bit.
I mean, they use Laporta so well on play action.
Their offense is, I love watching that offense.
It's amazing. It's so interesting to watch when you watch them and then watch like a crappy team. It's like, holy crap. It's like this just they know what they're doing here.
I can't wait for Ben Johnson to be the head coach of the Eagles next year. It's gonna be great.
God. That would be crazy.
He's been waiting for just like the right,
like a
team.
Real job.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I just saw on this depth chart. Traquan Smith is on this depth chart. He's terrible.
He is?
Traquan Smith? He was garbage.
On the Lions. I think about on Alex's team. I was like, what?
No. Like, I was just looking at the Lions depth chart. Like, Traquan Smith was just bad.
He'd be ranked around the same place I have Burks, which is not ranked. So
the fact that he's still in the league is unbelievable. So I mean, yeah, I think there actually is another name here to mention. That I think Bellinger is a nice little sleeper type.
I like Bellinger.
I've always been a Bellinger guy. You know,
I do like Bellinger. We'll see like that. I don't know. I don't know. There's just not much there as far as an offense goes. Like, that's like Neighbors. Like, somebody's got to carve out a role. It's a small piece of a small pie on that offense to me. So
yeah, I'm not banking on him or relying on him for anything. It would be just nice to see if he could. He's a talented player though, so like that's the thing I would like to see if they actually can use him. But the Giants are a bit of a dumpster fire.
And you hate Shig, so we won't talk about him. You don't.
I don't think he's very good.
You just hate him as a person too.
So. No, I don't know anything about him as a person. But what I do know is I thought he was overrated the year that everybody thought he was going to break out. And
everybody was just looking for the opportunity, right? Like,
yeah, and I get it. I mean, and he was super athletic, and everybody loves that. But I just don't. I don't think this guy's it at all.
He's same thing as KJ Osborne to me, where like every time I saw him try and get an opportunity on third down, he was just dropping the ball like every time.
I mean, I'm on record saying I think I like Josh Wiley more than him, and he's the second tight end in that room. So I mean,
there you go.
I would like to see a Josh Wiley, breakout season.
I don't have Cade Stover ranked, but like, who knows? He was teammates with Stroud at Ohio State, so like, you never know. I just don't. First year, I don't really have any expectations. What about you?
No, I mean he's very clearly behind Schultz as well, and he's kind of in that mold. I mean he's probably a good two-way player as far as blocking and receiving, but I mean you can't project much from a backup tight end in his first year. I think this is kind of just this hold situation. See what you got for next year. I think Schultz signed for at least 1 year. On his
absolutely bodied today by Derek.
I didn't even see that. No.
After the play, Stingley just ran up and just dump trucked him.
Yeah. Really? I gotta watch that. That's should be fun.
It was on
I love a good dump truck. That's funny.
Yeah, total cheap shot by Stingley. So Schultz must have been being a piece of shit or something.
Yeah, something was weird there. So Jason Sanders is the kicker on this team, and then there's 4 defenses. You got the Dolphins, Lions, Texans, and Packers.
That ain't it. That ain't it. What are you talking about?
That's not his, unless I was looking at the wrong one when I made the list.
Yeah, he's got.
There was. Oh, I was looking. Who was I looking at then? I might. Is that yours? That's yours.
That's my team.
That's your team. Actually, I noticed it faster.
It looks so familiar.
I do. Oh, they're right next to each other on my chart.
He has the Patriots and the Cowboys, and he's got
Patriots, Cowboys, and Matt Gay. Yeah. So anyway, don't look at this crap.
He's got. Honestly, his defenses were probably. I mean, I don't know.
Defense. Obviously, Dallas has been insane the last 3 years.
Really fucking good. Yeah.
And then the year before that, obviously, New England's number 1.
Micah Parsons would be my bet for Defensive Player of the Year this year. So
in a contract year, bro, he's gonna go off. It's gonna be stupid.
in that style of defense too, like, oh man, it's such a change from the previous year. Like he'll could see him getting like 20 plus sacks pretty easily this year.
I mean 20 is pretty wild, but it's possible. It's not out of the question.
So I'm saying, the Patriots are probably a top 5 defense too. So.
Yeah, I mean they're good. They're just gonna be in awful game scripts probably, but
yep.
So anywho, here's the projected starters. Obviously, omit the kicker defense here, but this is what I had listed out for this team. Obviously, Sean, you might see it a little differently based on Ramondre and Zach Moss, perhaps, but even Swift, even for that matter. But this is the best I could do given the receiver situation. There is not a lot of other options, frankly, at the receiver position.
As currently constructed, I would probably just throw like Dowdle in that last instead of Myers. Maybe. But outside of that, like it's not. There's nothing wrong with the starting lineup. It's just outside of that, like
there's just nothing, Sean. Like literally, like usually when I say there's nothing, there's at least some bodies. There's not even bodies here.
No bodies.
We have a bunch of air, dude. It's like the wide receiver meeting room. There's a bunch of open seats. It's pretty unbelievable. I don't think I've ever seen in any dynasty league anything less than this. Like this is the least amount of total bodies I've ever seen at the position. So I mean,
it's just such a classic roster construction for Alex to just be so contrarian. We're like in 2024, like everybody's like super like want to be deep at wide receiver.
Yeah, like we gotta have tons of depth, and then he's just like, nah.
I've got a top 3 player at both onesie positions, and my running backs are deep.
Everybody's expecting results, right away.
Right away.
Man, you just got to keep zagging, man. Just keep zagging. Something good will happen.
Is this a playoff team, Sean?
No.
So
maybe.
Where do you rank them power ranking wise then? Because they were 7th last year.
Yeah, I don't know, 8.
I was gonna say like a 7 or 8 probably for me as well.
Yeah, well, I think I gave a team a 7 already. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I need to. We'll have a whole power ranking episode, I'm sure, at some point here right before the season starts. But I mean, I think this team is tough to project with 5 receivers, man.
But if Mahomes goes on like an absolute heater, like it doesn't matter. He's going to win him weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it literally, there's 3 guys to me. It's Mahomes, Nakua, and Laporta. Like if they go off at those 3 positions, like he should be able to string together some wins. Like I don't think this is going to be like a complete bottom feeder team at all.
Yeah, he gets like 20 points from his starting running backs. Like he'll be competitive every week.
Yeah, he'll function, but I just worry. Like, I mean, last year he did have a very solid stretch of injury luck as well. Like a lot of these guys did stay healthy. Laporta played 17. Nakua played 17. I think Harris played 17. Ridley played 17. Like all these guys played all the games. So like who knows if that happens again. But if it doesn't happen, we are in trouble.
I'm trying to look for a trade that he can send you for
for Elijah Mitchell. I mean, I got a zillion depth receivers. He can have Wan'Dale Robinson, maybe. I don't know.
Quentin Johnson for
Jesus Christ. It might be the worst trade.
For Elijah Mitchell straight up right now. Who says
the most just like goddamn it trade of all time? It's like, come on, dude. But I think it's not the worst idea. It's like it's so crazy. Ugh, man, it is
Wan'Dale Robinson for Elijah Mitchell, right?
Yeah, that's what I was like Wan'Dale kind of like somewhat fits, but even then, like I don't even like even if he got the job, like even if he went down, Elijah Mitchell plays like 3 games and gets hurt, and it's like I just wasted for nothing anyway. Like he's just not gonna play. I don't know, man. It's just it's crazy. Anywho, we don't, both of us do not believe this is a playoff team at its current construction. Now, there's not to say that Alex won't make some moves, but here's the thing, Sean. We have to talk about it. This team has no draft picks. They have no draft picks.
It's not what you're looking for.
And we don't have a lot of things to trade away for said draft picks that doesn't completely kill the team from a competitive standpoint. Like, obviously, Laporta, Puka, Mahomes carry big trade value. However, if you trade any one of the three of those guys, you're probably not a contender anymore at all. You're probably not even in the consideration. So I don't know where this team goes, Sean. I have a hard time. I have a hard time projecting this team 3 years out. I don't know what's going to happen. It's because there's just not a lot of influx of any talent coming in, and I'm scared about it.
You're locked in. He's got 4 picks in the 2027 draft. He's just getting ready to unload.
I mean, they just keep the train rolling. The old fuck them picks mentality. It goes full Rams on us. Anywho, I think that's going to wrap up the 2 team reviews, our episode 70, our team review spectacular, if you will. We are planning to do a couple more of these in the near future here. We're going to try to knock out all these right before the season starts. And then we're going to have a couple of other pre-season podcasts. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to do the preseason poll. I think that's going to be a fun one where we can see kind of what the league thinks about everybody else in the league and maybe what players you're most looking forward to, hot takes, anything like that. And of course, if there's anything you would like to see on the podcast from now until the start of the season, we'd love to hear it. So yeah, Sean, any parting words here after our 2 hour and 15-minute podcast?
No, man, it was a blast. We'll have knocking them out. We got
talk about.
How many? What are we in right now? Is that halfway through?
I believe we got to 6. I think we have 4 more left.
Okay,
we have 4 more left. I could be wrong.
And Tibbs,
Tibbs,
Vince,
Lionheads. Yeah.
Yep.
I think that might be it. And there's one other one. Maybe I'm forgetting. Dan. So it's 5.
Oh, okay, halfway there.
So we're halfway there.
So we'll probably have to do another one of these.
Might have to do a double. Might have to do another double. But I got to tell you, I like the double. It was nice to get in the groove, and I think it worked out pretty good. So, anywho, we will see you next time on the PhD Dynasty podcast on episode 71. So, see you later.